You put the check, I didn't really do that. I didn't really do that.
Good evening, welcome to the Granby Heights Planning Commission, Wednesday, May 17th, 2023. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bonjorno?
Here.
Commissioner Franciszewski?
Here.
Commissioner Rourke?
Here.
Commissioner Holland?
Here.
Chairman Gentry?
Here.
Mayor Kearns? Here. Councilman Panzera is excused. Director Mazzaro?
Here.
Director Kelber?
Here.
Thanks, Megan. Approval of minutes, are we, it looks like we're gonna be all caught up then
Yeah.
tonight?
Yeah.
All right. Are there any additions or corrections? Is it best to approve them one at a time, or?
You can do all at once,
Okay.
unless you're more comfortable doing separately.
I don't know if there's no changes, then,
I did find just a typo, or I can if I can find it. Sorry. It was next week. Okay, so the April, on the third page, 305, way on the top, the last sentence, it says, and softening details song back. I think it should be come back.
Okay.
Any others? Make a motion with the changes as noted.
Yeah, motion to approve with the changes made for April 19th, 2023, February 15th, 2023, and March 15th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor say aye, those not in favor say nay.
Aye. Thank you. Anyone that will be speaking in front of the commission tonight, or think they may speak in front of the commission tonight, please stand, raise your right hand, answer in the affirmative. Swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Yes. Yes.
All right, thank you. Any other changes to the agenda? Megan?
I was gonna suggest possibly doing the case a little bit out of order, you know, they're on the agenda, if it suits everyone. Case 3 is very uncomplicated, I believe. I believe that applicant may be traveling from out of town to let them get on the road. And then we'd like to switch the last 2 cases as well.
Switch them, like, just,
Have the parks go first and the municipal building
okay,
election.
okay. All right.
Just again, trying to get people out as quickly
Yes,
as
miss.
we can.
I'm Shirley Gaddis. Could you speak up a little, please? I can't quite hear you.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Thank you.
We're gonna juggle the order of the schedule here for a travel schedule. So let's start with item number 3, case 10-2023, 1064 Dublin Road. Joe Moore, AODK Architects.
Yeah, good evening. My name's Joe Moore. I'm representing AODK Architecture for the rail patio enclosure. This was approved last summer. The whole package was. The dining patio got redesigned, and the simplest way to state that is there was 2 dining pavilions as part of the patio. They've been eliminated, and the old approved dining patio pretty much consisted of tables, planters, and fencing, and it's all just been reconfigured. But it still contains those elements minus the dining pavilion. The footprint hasn't changed.
So lighting instead of a pavilion, basically.
Pardon me?
So lighting instead of the pavilion.
No, there was overhead lighting on the previous example.
Okay.
I have the previous available. There were renderings that indicated the lighting.
Okay.
It was like a triangle approved type.
Yeah, it was like a metal structure, and there were two of them. It sort of got eliminated in budget with the cost overruns and everything, something had to go.
Liz, do you have any comments you want
Really, no, it's a very minor change, but there's no provision for staff approval of changes in the PUD, so I needed to bring it before the commission for your review, but yeah, very uncomplicated request.
to say? Okay,
No comment.
Francis?
No comment.
Mark?
No comment.
Any comments either, Mayor?
No, thanks.
All right, is there a motion?
Motion to approve PC case 03-2023 as submitted.
Second.
Second. Commissioner Cascucci?
Yes.
Commissioner Rourke?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Buren?
Yes.
Chairman Gentry?
Yes.
Approved?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful out there.
Yeah,
Enjoy that patio.
it'll be a nice ride.
All right, we're back up to the top. PC case number 9-2023, 1530 West First Avenue, Bradley Weber, applicant, Ohio National Bank, represent on behalf of Ohio National Bank.
My name's Brad Weber. I'm representing Fiorelli Construction. We're the general contractor.
Hi, I'm Casey Sigmund. I'm with PNC, project manager for PNC on the project. We're looking to get approval to proceed with the ADA improvement project for our branch at the location. With that, it includes handicap parking stalls constructed in concrete on the opposite side of the building. We're addressing all accessible routes to the public right-of-way, entranceway, and our banking devices, as well as a full mill and overlay of the parking lot, refresh of the lot.
Liz?
Yeah, I mean, it obviously it is largely, it's an ADA upgrade and maintenance project. However, it has a few considerations that bear it coming before the board. And if you look through the packet, there's some imagery there that indicates kind of how traffic works today. I would say, among the improvements, having the ADA parking spaces not backing into the drive-in is probably the biggest, most obvious one. As far as particular considerations with regard to the lot, and I don't know that, I'm not sure when this lot was constructed. I'm not sure how many of the deviations from standards are on record. I didn't find any records in relation to those topics, so I just went ahead and listed them all, and then they can be on record. This site is in the overlay district, so there's an extra, few considerations there. They don't add a lot in this particular case because of the subject matter, but nonetheless, just so you know. There, in addition to the ADA upgrades, as part of them, there's also new railing. There's a little bit of a conversation. So we'll just start with parking. The parking spaces as provided are generally 9 feet wide by 18'9" deep versus 10 feet wide by 19 feet per the zoning code for angled spaces of this type. They're workable. ADA spaces are required to be 8 feet with an 8-foot access aisle, which is what is drawn here. We don't really have that described in the code, but it meets ADA. A required drive aisle is 20 feet. I didn't find a dimension on the drawings, but I scaled it. Looks like 19 feet versus 20 feet. Today on the west lot, there are 21 spaces and no ADA spaces. 21 spaces, there'll be 19 spaces and 2 ADA, including 2 ADA spaces on the left west side of the lot when this is completed. On the east side, there's 7 today, including 2 ADA, and there'll be 7 in the future with no ADA. The total prior to this work that I could count was 28 versus 26, so we're losing a couple spaces. Also, I did a just area takeoff based on the auditor's website. It looks like at about 11,600 square feet. I don't know if you guys have that number more specifically, but that's close to what I was able to figure out for the auditor's site. Per our code, at 250 square feet of floor area, you'd need 47 spaces. ADA is supposed to be calculated off the required zoning reduction, and so, but happily enough, 2 spaces is what's required for between 26 and 50, so we still have very enough spaces for ADA. And just a note that drive-throughs aren't permitted at all in the Grandview Avenue overlay district, so this is a non-conforming condition which can remain as long as the bank continues to operate that way. A couple notes on ADA sidewalk improvements to the front door. One is that they're extending out into the city's right-of-way, and I couldn't totally tell from the submitted documents where the right-of-way line is. It's where,
It's generally right on the backside of that
The
sidewalk.
sidewalk, yeah.
So there is, the original documents did show protrusion of the handrail extensions,
yeah.
but we can absolutely 90-degree them per code.
Yeah, well, I think what we'd like to ask, what I suggest in the staff report anyway, is that the question as to whether the grade can be modified so that you're flat before you get there and the ramp can stop, the railing can stop versus turn. From an aesthetic perspective would be recommended. Additionally, a pipe rail and a fairly undifferentiated railings, not really in keeping with the architecture of the building, not really in keeping with the design guidelines, so invite the commission to discuss the character of the rail as well there, since it is on the front and relatively significant aesthetic contribution to the appearance of the project there in the front. And then just a note as well, there was a case that I remember that spoke to the landscaping that was redone here, maybe Jamie was probably on the commission back then. Some of it looks like it might need repair, just return to that original condition, so a note about that as well. And let's see, I did a check on the landscaping. There's not really room to screen the lot with the layout the way that it is. The number of parking spaces to tree ratio actually is met by the 4 trees out front, so there's no issue there. So really just inviting the commission to weigh in on a few of those items. That's all I have.
Yeah, thank you. Mark, you have any comments or questions?
I guess for parking, since you're reducing a couple of parking spaces, what have you noticed, or have you done any look at, is there a lot ever full, at certain hours, and that it would cause spillover, into neighboring areas, or do you have an idea of counts of usage?
Sure. Yeah, typically this lot has the available spacing, even on our busiest days where, are at the beginning and the end of the months, typically Monday and Fridays. So that's something we have discussed with our banking partners at the bank branch, and they're satisfied with the current loss of parking.
Yeah, and I know a lot of your business would be done through the drive-through, and has been through time.
Yep.
And not everybody goes into a bank all the time, but you do have a good separation of the flow, and by moving the ADA parking to a safer side, that seems like that'd be pretty logical to me too. Better for further sightlines backing out when people tend to be more zippy when they're going into the drive-through. I would agree on the pipe railing. Have you had any discussions about if there's options or things to make that a little bit nicer than
Yeah,
what's going on?
we have another spec that's a little bit more decorative with like a 4-inch off-center picket option. We've used it elsewhere. The spec that's on the drawings was more for just 100% ADA compliance with the extensions, height, all the components. So the picket one I'd be happy to share with as an alternate for us to use there.
Yeah, and I know there's no real great slope change from the sidewalk to the adjacent landscape, and they tend to follow the same thing, so it's not you're gonna fall off the sidewalk and
Right.
need that type of guardrail. It's mostly just for a handrail purpose, but,
Yeah.
it just seems like that would be helpful to be more in character, as Liz was pointing out.
Sure.
And, yeah, if there's some landscaping that needs refreshed, it seems like it'd be an opportunity time to do that. I would agree on that. That's really the only things. Appreciate you, doing it, clean the site, with the new refresh and everything. It just, I think that's always improvements of the site is important.
Thanks, Mark. Francis?
So just some clarification, I understand the parking and then the path has to be ADA, so why are you reconstructing the sidewalk on the front? Just has to also be ADA to connect
Are you talking from the parking stalls to the entranceway or?
from first, like,
Oh, from
when you're
first.
talking that
Yeah.
you're gonna put the rail.
Right, that's typically a condition of ADA accessibility, is a connection to the public sidewalk or public right of way. So that, we're currently in a ramp condition there now. The elevation change from the door to First Avenue is right, if we do a straight run as it's shown, is right on the limits of the ramp condition. So that's why the rails had to be introduced. Currently, there's like an oversized sidewalk that's 8 feet wide. We're reducing the footprint, giving back some green space there as well.
That's the dotted area.
Yes, yeah.
I would just like to point out, like, where you're connecting in the sidewalk, because that's steep, that doesn't need ADA. It's over, one slope is 2.15, the other one is 4.7. But that's matching existing, so. Usually slopes 2%, they build them now flatter than that, because construction always is never gonna happen, so.
Right.
But if you're making existing, I just pointed out that that's existing condition. No comment.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, similarly, I think the rail's required, it's basically what we've determined, no matter what. My only real comment is, does it have to be in the center of the building? Could it be moved off to the side? Would that be an improvement where you don't obstruct the look? But I don't feel strongly enough about it, so I think improving a decorative handrail, and as you mentioned, you're at the constraints of the site, so there's no grading you can do to change the condition in any way or change the rail extension. That's a question.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, our restricted variables are the front entrance and then the street elevation. So, I mean, with the ramp's currently at 7.8%, max of 8.3. So to try to back that off 4 feet, we wouldn't be under that 8.3 unless we went to more of like a switchback condition, but that's gonna bring longer route and different things, different challenges.
And if you moved it to either side of the building, the existing grade doesn't accommodate a little more forgiveness on that slope.
I could get with our engineers to look into that, absolutely.
I'm looking at, I don't think it does.
Okay,
But it just, if you looked at it, I would be curious to the engineer's opinion.
okay.
But otherwise, yeah, I'm kind of with the other two commissioners that have spoken. I mean, Mark and Francis, just like, let's get a better looking rail, and thank you for improving it. It's good to address accessibility. That's it.
Sarah?
Yeah, I agree. I think, I'd like to see the better rail. It sounds like you can't do much to the ramp condition to have it extend early to not have to turn. I think the best you can do there. I had a question though, maybe for Liz about the dumpster screening. Is that part of the overlay, like a requirement of the overlay?
It is a requirement of the overlay. The existing dumpsters are as you see them in the staff
Yeah.
report, they're not screened. we're trying to encourage, property owners in the district to, you know, make that improvement. It looks like there's room to make that improvement here. You can't screen the parking lot because there's no space for shrubbery or a wall or anything like that, but it does look like you could physically have space to introduce screening for the dumpsters, if that's something that the owner would be amenable to.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be nice. I mean, I know there's a lot of asphalt here that you walk by that you can't do much about with the, like I said, the condition there to screen it much, but I think if you can do something on the dumpsters, that would be nice, so you can talk to something about that. I don't really have any other comments.
All right, thanks. Yeah, all my comments have been addressed, I just need to feed into the rest of the commission, but would love to see something happen with the dumpsters if possible. So I appreciate the consideration there. Mayor? Any other staff comments?
No, appreciate it.
Comments or questions from the audience? Okay. Hearing none, if there's is there a motion?
Just the rail.
The rail.
Yeah,
Is that a, maybe look at the rail, or is that a, you want a new rail?
I think it's better rail, but I think the dumpsters is
Could
an
be.
existing condition
Yeah.
that, they're making improvements, and I think that's a little more out of budget, while they've already budgeted money to the rail.
So
But a
consider.
better rail is such a big,
Can they submit
Staff
the,
approval.
can they submit to you the picketed rail for approval?
yes. Motion to approve PC case 9/2023, including parking variance, reducing required parking to 26 spaces, and with the condition that the rail will change and with approval from city staff.
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Rourke,
Yes.
Commissioner Bonjero,
Yes.
Commissioner Cascuski,
Yes.
Chairman Gentry.
Yes. So everybody clear then, you're approved to move forward, and then the staff will review the rail and the road.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for making improvements.
All right, item number 2, PC case number 11-2023, 1065 Dublin Road, Michael DeCarlo, is the applicant.
Hi everyone, I'm Mike Starr with Fourth Interiors. Justin Kinnear with Fourth Interiors. Mike DeCarlo couldn't be here tonight, but he's the owner of the building. We are leasing the building. Sorry.
I'm Aaron Schlagbaum, I'm with Next Day Signs, and these guys with the permits and the sign basis for this.
But we are applying to put our, a new face in the existing sign structure that has our company name and branding in it.
Can you tell us about the business or?
Yeah, we started on Fifth and Kinney as Fourth Home, and then we still have that space, but we expanded to the 1065 Dublin Road, more retail space for us. But we do interior design for like 15 years now, and then we opened a furniture showroom about 6 years ago at the Fifth and Kinney location. But we outgrew it, so we needed bigger space. And so when that came available, it was perfect. But the outside is a little rough, so Mike painted it for us, and now we're just trying to get the sign figured out. Because that Dublin Road is so busy, the sign is just huge, and we feel like it would help us get more business to our space.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Liz?
Yeah, so I'll just direct you to the pictures to begin with. There's an aerial you can see there, and then the prior condition, what it was covered in. Where I got like basement
Yeah, did it
I
around a
think
long
everybody
time.
did.
Yeah.
And I just want to draw your attention, this isn't really in the application, but I noticed when I was working on this that the soft scape edge has been paved over, which I think we need to kind of discuss tonight as well. So just notice that. And then the signage image, I took a specific picture so that you can see the relationship between the sheet sign and this existing sign cabinet. It's easy to see from looking at that, relationship, but from a visibility perspective, the sign being up in the air is beneficial. It's a little curious on the other side because they sort of overlap. Moving on, the specific issues here, post signs, basically any sign that is non-conforming and has been, the business that was using it has discontinued use of it, becomes non-conforming and is supposed to be removed. However, as with anything, the commission can, weigh in on something that is non-conforming and decide that it can remain. So the post sign that's there is 14'3" high, 6 feet for a post sign, which is a little bit silly maybe, but nonetheless, that's what the code says, maximum height for a post sign. The existing post sign is indicated to be a foot back from the right of way versus 10 feet minimum, code required. So those are the non-conforming issues. The other considerations the signage code lays out is making sure that an existing post sign doesn't impair or impede vehicular or pedestrian traffic. There is no sidewalk across that frontage. As there is no sidewalk across most of the frontage in that area, that would probably be an improvement that would be made on a broader scale at some point in the future rather than site by site, given a lot of non-conforming conditions along there that would make it difficult right now. I've received at least no other signage proposed on the building from the tenant, so this would be the only signage, 37.5 square feet per side, or a total of 75 square feet. You're permitted 100. The post sign is not the worst post sign. There are some that are certainly worse. But it's also not spot on with what the signage code would prefer. I didn't see that any illumination is indicated. Is that true? There's no illumination in the box?
I think there are fluorescents in there.
Yeah.
I think it's unclear if they're currently working.
Yeah.
That's what the
Yeah.
face.
Yeah.
I mean, going like this, I'm not sure if they were.
Sign backgrounds are not allowed to be illuminated. Only letters can be illuminated. So you could invert the design and have a black opaque panel with white letters that would shine. But if it as it is, it wouldn't be permitted to be illuminated without variance. Again, a little bit of a curious situation, so I'm just laying out the conditions and then would defer to the commission for consideration. On the sign, I would also ask the commission to engage the applicant regarding the painting over of the softscaping that's in our right of way. I don't think that's what we want. It expanded the curb cut width, edge to edge, as a safety concern that I don't believe was reviewed by the city when it was done, unless I missed something.
Yeah, Mike's not.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody knows?
It was, yeah.
It
It was a
was
condition
done
of the
before.
lease to have it repaved, but I don't know about the softscape piece.
It was kind of done before we got there.
Gotcha. Well, I believe we would want that to be looked at by this. I didn't notice it was in an application while I was doing the review for staff report, and then, realized that we've got a curb cut edge to edge now and no softscape out front. So I think that we would want the safety condition reviewed by our city engineer, and frankly, we'd want to have softscape returned to the front of that business.
Is that what's in this picture? That here shows the soft.
And we might not want this softscaping,
So
but that's what they think.
would planter boxes suffice for that, or would it have to be actual dirt?
Typically don't prefer planter boxes in the right of way.
Okay.
right? So likely would need to return to dirt and planting just east of here. The DeMary truck site, I think, is kind of mounded, mulched with some bushes in it. Could be something, it doesn't need to be super dramatic. It'd be, you could do all kinds of things to improve it, but no, I don't believe structured elements would be preferred out on the right of way.
Is there any comments?
Okay. So the sign placement's not great with it right next to the sheet sign, in my opinion. Like, it looks goofy, some of these photos on how tight it is. But there's no other place for a sign to go. And I'm assuming you wanna reuse the sign because
Yeah.
it's there and you're trying to cut, save on costs. I get that. But there is really no other place for it to go out here, right? I mean, it's kind of,
I think you could move it to the other side of the lot. You know, there's the Mary Trucking sign is on the far east side of the next lot over to the east. It wouldn't be competing there,
right?
but of course, it's not sitting there right now.
Yeah, I know, there's an existing condition, right? Okay. And then the other issue is the height is taller than what the post sign code, which I was trying to track all the things.
Permits, yeah.
Permits, right, but again, you're trying to use an existing.
Yep.
Yeah, too close to the right of way and too tall.
But it's not a safety concern in the right of way, like, from a visibility standpoint.
It's on
Encroachment, but is it a safe, like, is it a blocking view where people can't see when they turn or anything? Engineer have any safety, public safety have any?
No, it's not an issue in that regard.
I mean, that'd be my most concern is that it would somehow impact, but I mean, it's been there, people are used to it, I guess. I don't know. I think from a sign standpoint, it's simple and it's clear and it's nice looking. It's not junked up with a lot of logos and things. So from that standpoint, I don't have an issue with it. I appreciate trying to see you're moving into a new space and the sort of hardship of, trying to
Yeah.
put in new stuff and try to use what's there. Even though I understand those code says it should put back into non-conforming. So I don't know. Oh, I do think the softscape's important though. I will say that. I think going back to that, I mean,
I
on
think
behalf of
we
your
would
business.
agree.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
We-
we want that to
Yeah.
look nice, so I think I do feel strong about the softscape being returned and trying to make that frontage look good, and that would probably benefit your business.
Yeah.
I could get on board with the sign. I feel like it's existing condition. It's been there. It's an improvement from what's there, like the Carpet King one. It looks nicer than that, so.
We had the whole building painted black and
Yeah.
trust it.
You'll find the outside
It
a little
looks
bit.
nice, yeah.
Yeah, it looks nicer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate the improvements to the facade. I think that's, I don't know, I don't have a whole lot other than that right now.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, just kind of a question related to the application, some more for staff. So I think the thing before us is just for the sign right now, right? And some of these things are kind of site conditions that are maybe a result of the tenant changing over, but should follow a different process.
It's a enforcement process, frankly, from us.
Okay.
I just, since we need to address it, was offering an opportunity for planning commission to weigh in as well.
Okay, well, so for the sign, totally fine with it, it's existing, it's an improvement, and, I think if there was a major site plan change, I would get rid of it, right? And
Yeah.
I think it's a bigger thing than we're talking, a tenant changing over using their sign, I'm fine with. The overpaving of the green lawn and greenscape and safety concerns have been addressed by everyone else. I definitely think that's something we need to push back on your landlord for and make a requirement, as part of the improvement he's already made. Outside of that, I have a problem with what you've done.
Thanks, Sam. Francis?
So when I first saw the picture with the sign in front of sheets, I'm like, well, it's blocking it, then I realized it's existing. So that's what sheets they put it in front of that sign, that came first, right? So if they put it there, I guess I don't care. But speaking of that, when I see the picture, I mean, we talk about the offset, that it's a foot versus 10, sheets is even closer. I don't remember, did we vote on that?
Yeah.
So we allowed it, so.
Whether they allowed it at exactly the right spot, I don't know.
I remember discussing that sign, but, yeah.
What's that?
I remember discussing
The
that
opposite,
sign,
okay.
but.
So we do it for them, why not for you?
Just the
Not a-
right-of-way jog, does the right-of-way jog there, it like looked like it on the parcel map, maybe that's part of
Yeah,
it.
that's what I was looking at.
It's also conceivable.
Okay.
It must, because I was looking at it on Google Maps.
Kind of a problem with the height, especially in this, it's a fast speed, you kind of need, so I'm okay with it, especially because it's existing. I was just gonna comment, about the illumination, that we don't know if it happens or not, but you know, you don't operate at night, so I would prefer if you don't put in illumination, just.
Yeah, I think that-
Anytime we can reduce
Yeah.
the light pollution, I'm all for it. but
Yeah,
besides
we're okay
that-
with that.
Same.
Yeah. Currently, all the bulbs don't work anyway, so we were planning on replacing them.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's it.
Mark?
Yeah, I'll second or third about the landscape. I think with a paved over, it makes it confusing where you drive in, and it creates safety issues and hitting the curbs and everything, so that needs to be corrected. The sign, I've been going back and forth on it because when we were through sheets too, you know, they're also looking that your sign's there, but if it changed owners, they probably were expecting that to go away since it's non-conforming and it's blocking and, you know, so it's, you know, sheets, you know, is losing an opportunity to have a clearer view of their sign. And the picture, you know, clearly shows it blocks it from the other direction. And, you know, we really need to respect, you know, their sign too, that we have approved. And so that I'm going back and forth with this being an existing sign. And there's a clear rule that if things change, it needs to go away. And there is room for it to go on the other side to be similar in another location. So I'm going back and forth. I'm hearing what you guys are saying too, and you know, part of me is thinking that same way. Because we welcome having a great business in that area as well. And having a, you know, good person there. But, you know, I'm actually leaning that it should be moved a little counter to you guys because of its blockage of another sign. So, and approval of that tenant, that they would have expected it to be moved. So that's sort of my stance right now.
Okay. Any other comments? Mark? You seem like you thinking of saying something else.
No, just going back and forth, so.
Okay.
It's a tough one because it's existing. My first thought was just, yeah, it makes sense. It's nice, simple sign. And it's tall when you're driving along there, but we're trying to, you know, across the street, we're getting lower signage. You haven't applied for any signage on your building like Carver King used to have up high, which could give you the high signage that you need. And so this one seems like it wants to be down lower instead. And I'd be amenable to, you know, work with you or, you know, have our staff work with you to put signage on top of the building instead, maybe for less cost, you know, than this sign, and get rid of this podium sign up front. And, you know, just, you know, that might be another option to have a sign that's up higher, something to think about. I don't know what you guys think about that too, as an option.
So you're-
Or what Liz says, you know, for some of the code requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about
so-
signage on the building?
Signage on the building is permitted, certainly. I will say that I think that generally speaking, the signage codes are trying to drive to a different look than what we've had in the past. And, you know, monument signs that have some landscaping related to them that dress up a site or signage on the building, particularly with, we're so tight. Signage on the building seems to work better in a lot of cases because then you don't, they don't require variances, like almost all the signs require variances because of how tight we are otherwise. Maybe, an alternate could be to relocate this sign and or modify it somewhat to be on the other side of the site. Since you now have a wide open frontage, we could talk about where the curb cut wants to be in relationship to the signs and maybe move that to the left, the east side associated with the new sign location. I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity here. And you guys, I'm sure, appreciate the comments too. You're design folks, so you're probably noticing all the same things.
Yeah, just different levels of cost is what I think about it.
Yeah, this was actually the most inexpensive. Was to just reuse it.
There could be maybe there's a little point here where it's allowed to stay for a year while you get your feet under you, and then, reconsider in a year if you're in position to improve the sign.
Yeah, to Mark's point, I am concerned about the precedent of not following the rules when things switch, like that we're setting a precedent that we're allowing stuff to happen. And so, we'll talk about that. But I'm going back and forth because I understand, like, we want the business to do well there, we want it's a nice looking sign, it's just unfortunate that, I know you're trying to use an existing one, but, I think in the long term, it would probably be, because this could be looking how close they are, and I think if you do start to look at that frontage and consider where that curb cut really wants to be and do some landscaping and incorporate the sign, it'll be a much nicer entryway into your potential business as well. And then maybe if you do a smaller sign and something up on the building might make a lot more sense. I'd be amenable to sort of a time delay to get there and maybe not have all the cost up front since you're trying to relocate. That could potentially be on board with that, but I am worried about the precedent, like we said.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with the design of your sign, but I really hate the sign that exists there now. I'd like to get rid of all the signs down through there. I mean, the Sheets sign is a little different being on the corner. I'm really frustrated though with the Sofscape going away. Is there anything the city can do to?
Oh, yeah. It's our right away.
Yeah.
It was done without permission. It will have to.
I mean, that puts you in a difficult position with your customers trying to come in and out, and I don't know, it just seems like an unsafe situation on such a
Like I say, I
busy
didn't
street.
notice it till I was working on the staff report, and like, oh, yeah, this is a challenge. So, yeah, we'll have to have the city, I mean, we can work with you guys and see where it makes sense maybe for your business for the curb cut 2B, but then work with the city engineer to get that, everybody happy with how it's working and put it back together in a way that is appropriate for city right away.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to some flexibility here to get you guys some signage and get you moving forward, but I mean, the code says we gotta get rid of this and there needs to be a curb cut. So, I don't know how we can package that this evening.
Are you worried about potentially shifting the curb cut closer to another intersection now? By moving the aerial, you're moving it closer to the corner and moving it from where it was.
Yeah, as I said, we are not in a position to make any recommendation this evening because I didn't involve the city engineer,
Right,
because I
yeah.
didn't realize it was an issue until yesterday. So, I think it's enough to hear your feedback. Because again, this is not necessarily a planning commission issue per se, it's a compliance issue. And the city engineer is gonna have to get involved, as well as the director of building and zoning will help resolve, a non-compliance issue.
Yeah, I'm sorry you guys are having to deal with this. This seems like a building owner issue to deal with. So I guess how can we, any thoughts on how we can move forward, assist the business, but achieve the long-term goals that the code sets out?
Or temporary sign thing in the code?
Yes. there are temporary signage provisions in the code. I'd have to look them up.
I mean, I'd be amenable to this being a temporary sign in this location, but that they come back with a permanent sign on the building or
Tell us where it is.
or in another location that meets current standards. And that condition that it's for 6 months or a year, you know, we can talk about, or if there's a provision that says what the maximum number is, or months for a temporary sign, I would be willing to do that, because they want to get in, you know, and advertise right now, but I think it impedes the Sheets sign from the other direction, and to meet code, it should be out of the way for that.
I guess my point there is if we go that route, I just want to make sure that it's a requirement to come back here and it's a set period of time so that there is an enforcement ability, because whenever you let things linger, they don't always get enforced later. So, that would be my opinion on that path.
Well, but I have a question, because what if I want to prove as a percentage, the way you phrase that, you know what I mean?
What was that? What if you want to?
Like, what if I don't have a problem with the sign and I want to vote, yeah, it's approved? The way you're saying to phrase that, how do I approve, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you can either make a motion however you want to make it, and see if it has the votes, or someone else can make a motion along those lines and see if you support it, I guess.
Because the motions cannot be negative, right? They have to be.
Affirmative.
Do we have to? She said not planning commission.
So just a point of order on the temporary signs, there's no, the provisions for temporary signs don't really apply here, the size and all kinds of things really don't help you any. But you could put a year stipulation on it, that you're permitting it to continue as a non-conforming condition for a year. And then you would just have to come back in and either ask again, say, this has been fantastic, we love it here, or perfect, or, and, you know, persuade us as to why that may be the case. And it could be, you know, that the city engineer wants the entry right there, so it is the place that makes the most sense, we don't really know that yet. But anyway, you could put a year, limit on the permission for the non-conforming use to continue, and then they would have to come back and be before you again for whatever the ask might be at that time.
So those two things would run independent of each other. The engineer's review of the curb cut,
Yeah.
the entrance,
Mm-hmm.
and the temporary sign.
Mm-hmm.
So we wouldn't have to tie that into a motion.
No, you don't need to
You're-
tie that into a motion.
you're
It's not
already-
really for a temporary sign, it's for, approval for a year for continuation of a non-conforming condition. As listed, too tall, too close to the right of way.
Is a year enough time?
Yeah,
Yeah. Say yes to that.
yeah. I mean, we'd always take more, but
Yeah.
here it's fair.
Yeah. We've been in there 3 months, so we're
Yeah.
trying to
Chomping at
get
the bit
stuff
for
going.
signs,
Yeah.
Any questions or comments from audience members? All right. Any further discussion, or is there a motion to entertain?
I move for case PC 11/2023 that we approve that the current sign location may be used temporarily for 1 year, using their layout that they submitted with the white background, black letters, unilluminated. And that within that time frame, we would expect them to come back with a permanent sign location option for consideration.
Second.
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, so I'll second.
One quick question, should it mention that it's non-conforming, or allowing a non-conforming sign for
Probably ideally.
Are you
So I'd like to
okay
add-
adding that?
Yeah, and that it's,
Current non-conforming.
that it's current non-conforming is the reason why we're making it temporary, so.
Can you go with that?
Yeah, second that.
Commissioner Holler?
Yes,
Commissioner Keskowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Zerma?
Yes.
Commissioner Warwick?
Yes.
Chairman Gentry?
Yes.
Approved?
Approved
Thank
for a year until we can figure this out.
Just
Okay,
like you so
thanks.
much, we want you to come back.
Thank you. Okay.
And then with the softscape, is that just a Mike DiCarlo piece?
Well, whoever on your end would work with us, we
Okay.
can have them, contact really everything involved. And
Okay.
we can follow up.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
And
Dave.
welcome to town, by the way.
Thank you.
All right, PC case, item number 4, PC case number 5-2023, 1587 West Third Avenue, Grandview Heights School District. Come on up. Why are the seats so far back?
they're scared.
I was wondering the same thing.
Nobody could sit in the front row.
Like church.
Yeah. State your name and
I'm Richard Espy, I'm a principal with KSK Landscape Architects and Planners here in Columbus.
take it away.
I didn't know if you were gonna go through the staff report.
No, you know, through the scope.
It's, welcome back. It's been about 21 months, almost 4 years since we were here before with our approval. There's been a few changes, obviously, in the last 2 years. There's been a lot of things that have happened in the market with supply chain issues and labor issues and inflation that's gone crazy, 20% 2 years ago. So what we want to go through is go through the plans, tell you what has changed. So what you're going to see is you're going to see the original plan that was approved and then the changes that we've made to the plans.
Can you move the podium back, or thank you.
Is that better? Okay.
Do you need to turn
No,
No,
it
no.
was just a podium.
Okay.
You know, I
So this was the original site plan as approved on full build out. The next slide will show you the changes that we've made. As you can see, almost everything is the same. The parking lots are in the same location. The entries into the buildings are the same. The big change is here, back here in the playground area. And that was really because, I'll get more into detail on this, but because some of the existing equipment that we were going to reuse couldn't be reused. So we brought out a new system there. We broke it down as in phases. We're currently in our phase 3 of construction, which, as you probably have driven by, you've seen the old middle school gone, big open space back there for the multi-purpose field and for playgrounds and things like that. Vehicular circulation, you can see we had it 2 places here with a drop-off on this side, and then the large parking lot, 130-car parking lot, just across Fairview Avenue. Where we're at today is almost the same. We had 167 spaces originally. We're at 168 now. So we've lost 1 or 2 here, we've added 1 or 2 there, and basically we're just up one space from the original approval.
Rick, do you want, then you can call for slides, or you can take the mouse and
Yeah.
go ahead yourself.
Yeah, that'd probably be easier. Okay, let's see what's in it. Thank you. Don't want to do that.
Cancel. I find clicking the arrows at the top is the quickest to navigate, at least for myself.
So when you look at the overall site plan, the northern side of the site,
the parking lot that's to the west. We had 20 spaces previously. We had 21 previously, we're at 20 today. Down in the southern part of the site, the existing spaces there were 6 and 4. We're currently meeting those as well. Currently today, and then the large lot, we went from 130 spaces to 132 for that total of 162 total, which is one more than we previously had. When you look at the pedestrian circulation, obviously there's circulation that comes and goes to the front of the high school, as well as to the primary school, the sidewalks, and the connective pieces. Everything at the front of the school, the north side, the high school side, there's no change. Anything that was planned previously. And the south side, we've eliminated these 2 sidewalks from the plan. Those are the only pedestrian circulation changes that we've made. Furnishings and fencing, you can see here we have some wood deck systems that are in the pink circles. We have a series of bike racks throughout the site, trash and recycling receptacles, along with a series of different types of fencings, from 4-foot ornamental metal fences to the white fence that matches along the back property lines. All those things are pretty much the same. On the north side, again, no change to where the locations of those things have been over the years, or since the last approval. Over near the parking lot, we've added composting bins in the community garden area rather than trash receptacles in that location. And then some of the fence relocations on the south side of the site, you can see we've changed around the parking lot, we've changed the location of that low metal fence. So it hugs the parking lot rather than running across the open field. We've relocated a couple of bike racks that were previously out there. They're actually up closer to the building now. We'll talk a little bit in the future about the middle school signage. We can show you where that's located. And then we've changed the low metal fence to a low metal decorative fence to match what the city is doing along the rest of Fairview Avenue. Furnishings have remained about the same. You can see here what was approved in the previous plan, and this is the actual equipment that we're providing out there, the globally, the street bike racks, the street light, podium seating, and the trash receptacles, as well as some of the fencing that was approved. The lighting plan, as you can see, we've got post-top light fixtures that are actually happening along the roadway as part of the city project. The parking lot lights in and around the parking lot. Some of those are shielded, some are not shielded, and then the pedestrian light poles around the site itself. On the north, we changed the sweeping walk, which gives us ADA access to the front door. We changed those pedestrian lights to post-op lights. Those are more historic looking, and in front of a historic 100-year-old building, they were more appropriate in that location. We've added one parking lot light off to the west side as well, and then we've added 2 lights in the outdoor learning center, which were not there previously. On the southern part of the site, we've modified the BOSC lighting. We had 6 lights in there previously. We wanted better lighting and illumination in that area, so we have 8 lights today. We've added, again, a parking lot light in the drop-off area, and because of the playground reconfiguration, we've actually just moved those 3 lights that previously were there around on the site. And then in the large parking lot, you can see here that we've modified the location of the lights to create a better photometrics across the parking lot. And you can see here the cutoff fixtures that we've got facing the neighborhood everywhere. So that's incorporated. We have given the photometric plan for the entire site to P-Liz, and so she has that and understands where all the lighting is, what the levels are throughout the entire site. These are the fixtures that we're using. You can see the more historic post-op, which we're using in front of the historic building, and then more maybe contemporary fixtures around the rest of the site. Some of the outdoor learning spaces and playground spaces around the project. You can see here at the front of the building, we actually added more brick paving than we previously had shown. We took that brick carpet and carried it all the way out to this public sidewalk. The outdoor learning space, which you see there to the east along Fairview, We've reduced that scope of work some, just because of the cost. And we've also changed the brick paving that was planned for that area to be a cast in place paving. Again, the cost element. At the parking lot, the north end of the parking lot, the large area that was community garden before, we've taken part of that, and that part of that has become a memorial garden for a student that had passed away. And then in the playground area, you can see here, as I mentioned, we previously had hoped to reuse some of the existing equipment. That wasn't possible. So we've actually gone and got earthscape structures, brand new playground equipment coming into the site. Really kind of cool, fun, playful pieces, which should be really additive to the overall site. Planting plan, you can see here the amount of trees and things that we've shown on the originally approved plan and what the full build out is today. You can see most of it's about the same. We've adjusted the location of some of the trees, and we'll talk more in detail about that. As you can see here on this northern side of the site, we previously had shown about 19 trees. We now have about 23 trees on the northern side of the site. So we're up a few trees in that location. On the southern side of the site, on the southern side of the site, we had about 68 trees in that location. Some of them you see along the southeastern portion there, which is now the city's public park. The city is actually planting a bunch of trees as part of that public park, so we didn't want to screen that, so we've actually opened that area up. We had about 68 trees before. We're now at 45 trees in this area. And then the large parking lot across Fairview, the original plans had 40 trees. We're at 34 trees, but we meet all the requirements for screening parking lots in the shade. And there you see the existing plant palette that we're looking at and the final plant palette that we have. We have a large variety of predominantly native trees throughout the entire site. Looking at the shrubs and ground cover plantings, you can see on the left the images that we had where the plantings were previously. It's a little bit clearer on the image on the right. Everything that's in dark green is actually plants that will be planted or have been planted or will be planted. The areas that are in light green were areas that we had contemplated planting shrubs and ground cover previously, but we were not able to do that, so we haven't done those areas in the light green. Same on the southern side, you can see we've got the shrub and ground cover planting going along the front of the building, accenting the front door, but some of the bands of previously proposed hedges and things like that have been removed. And we've gone with a much more native planting around the parking lot with earthen mounds and things like that as part of the play experience. And the parking lot itself, you can see the Memorial Garden and Community Gardens to the north, and then the two planted areas in the middle of the parking lot are actually bioretention swales. And that covers all the bioretention that we need for the entire site in those two areas of the parking lot. Additionally, we need to come back to you with the signage for the system, or for the overall schools. Here you'll see the sign locations. This is the existing conditions at the front of the high school. We're proposing and have constructed the high school signage in the location just to the east of that sidewalk there. It's about 1 foot off the sidewalk because of that ADA accessible ramp that we're doing. It's not a ramp, it's a sidewalk, but the ADA accessibility to the front door of the school, which never occurred previously. And here you can see on the middle school side, its location is located inside that drop-off area to the school, setback of 10 feet from the street edge. These are the renderings of what we think the sign is going to look like, and it does look like that. It's basically a brick monument sign with standoff lettering at the high school. The dimensions about 12 feet by 2 feet for the overall site signage. And then Larson Middle School, same thing. Brick sign with cast stone top and standoff lettering. And here you can see the actual construction drawing of what has been constructed. The high school side is constructed, the middle school side is not constructed. And these signs are illuminated. There are the lights on either side of the sign. There's obviously a lot of things that go on at the school in the evening hours with concerts and basketball games and things like that. So they are illuminated at night visibility. And that's all we have. Open to questions.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, Liz. Is there anything?
All right, I'll try to breeze through here. I think, Rick laid out the changes clearly. I'll touch on a couple things with regard to the signs. Before the permit was issued, the building department required all the parcels that used to be here to be combined into one. So even though we only have 2 schools at least, it's just one parcel, and the signs are limited to 1 ground sign per parcel. It's a little atypical condition here, but nonetheless, that's one of the variances that's required. Let's see, and I think that the high school sign is in the, what would be the preferred setback of 10 feet, so it's only 1 foot off the right of way. So that's a second variance. The schools were able to move the middle school sign back to behind that 10-foot line, so it's in a side yard, required side yard, but it's not in that 10-foot setback that we like to see. So from a signs perspective, that's really all there is. There's not really a traffic consideration for the high school sign because it's so far away from the intersection west, even though it's close to the right of way. All right. Just a couple of comments on the site clarifications more so than anything maybe. Safety Services had originally requested, and I have 20 feet in there, but actually the typo should be 30 feet wide, unobstructed path across the site just south of the main entry to the middle school, from the turnaround on Fairview to the parking lot in Oakland. They're beautiful illustrative drawings, but I couldn't find a dimension on there, so I want to just clarify that there's no obstructions in that.
Yeah, it is definitely 30 feet.
Okay, and then the post-op lights, which I only really noticed because I live there, frankly, the pedestrian lights, they're a little bright, so I thought it might be worth discussing if there's a timing aspect to those, that they might be turned off at a reasonable hour in the evening for glare, since we're next to residential. There is a desire, of course, on the part of the community to have more places to play ball-oriented games. So there's a space that's been identified on the front lawn to allow for that. So just if you have any questions about operation of that field, you might bring those to the fore. The city is picking up screening for the Fairview Avenue parking lot. There wasn't space, you may recall there was an easement granted for the parking lot, and the city, as part of the Fairview Avenue project, has provided for space for vegetative screening along that whole length. There's no screening indicated on the Oakland lot. It's a chunk of that lot that exists today, is gonna continue to exist. There's a little patch of green space between the lot and the sidewalk where possibly some screening could be added. So that's a consideration. The railings that have been installed around the school, they're a little bit haphazard, and I think some of them are from temporary conditions and this and that. They're also just galvanized pipe rail. There's a really nice railing that's been installed at the front entry to the high school, and I might just clarify the conditions for those other pipe rails. And then the last thing is, in reviewing the plans, there was screening indicated around the new electrical equipment in the northwest parking lot, and it looks like some of the components there have been installed, but the screening has not, so clarification of that may be called for. And other than that, you know, it's gonna be fantastic in about 3 months. I personally can't wait. That's all I have.
Mark?
I'll let you start. Still observing.
Oh, okay. Friends?
I have no comment.
Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very well laid out. I guess just picking up on some of the things that was put in the staff report about, is there a, do you know if there's a plan for the timing of lights as they go off at after, I know sometimes things can be late at school to 9 or 10, but go off at 11.
Not that I know of, but we can check in to see what the controls are and what we can do with that.
Okay, yeah, I think if that's an option, that would be good for the neighbors. I was trying to understand the vegetative screening thing.
It normally require parking lots to be screened from adjacent areas, particularly for, in the case of those cars, the parking is oriented to shine headlights into the houses across the street on Oakland. There used to be screening there, bushes there, 10 years ago. Okay, I hate to admit, but I believe the city took them out when we redid Oakland, and they didn't go back in.
Okay.
The sidewalk was widened, and I think it went from, you know, being fairly wide to fairly narrow. That's the problem.
All right. Okay. Seems like that'd be a good consideration if there's space to do it. I mean, it seems like we're in space over there.
There's about 18 inches to 2 feet of space there, but there's also a pretty severe grade change between parking and the sidewalk.
I see.
So it's pretty tough.
Okay, got it. Okay. And then the railing, I mean, what's proposed for the new stuff is all looks good and it's clear. But there's some inconsistency. Well, it seems like the railings, I mean, you're trying to pick up the existing over here on the, with the, on the side
Yeah,
of
we use the black ornamental rail, more historic looking rail at the front of the historic high school building.
Yep.
Then everywhere else, we went to a much simpler,
Simpler.
cleaner look everywhere. Some of the inconsistencies that Liz was talking about, I think are temporary rails.
Okay.
The sidewalk that currently is running in front of the middle school actually gets torn out and relocated further south.
Okay.
And I think some of those railings that you're talking about are happening at that temporary.
I see. So
temporary
that'll be cleaned up when the
Yeah.
new stuff. Okay. All right, I think that's all I have.
Mark or Francis, do you have any more? Mark's still absorbing.
Yeah, it's a big project, and there's a lot of little changes, but most of them seem like they're fine. I was checking, like with your lighting and tree changes, the lights weren't on top of trees, which I commented last time, and it looks like you got them solved and
Yeah.
stuff, but, so just trying to check other things other than what Liz has mentioned. Yeah, I would agree with Liz that it, because of the residential on the sides, looking in the school with all the site improvements you're doing, I think there should be some type of buffer between the houses and that northwest parking lot. Whether it is even some type of, and you want it to be safe too, you know, it doesn't want to be a screen wall that someone can hide behind or stuff, but it needs to be something that'll buffer parking car lights, something that is maybe lower, and since you don't have a lot of room, it could be, you know, landscaping might be hard, but is there something you can explore there to really tighten up that space a little bit and make it feel newer and like the rest of the property? It just seems a little bit ignored.
And
So I think
the
that's-
northwest lot on Oakland, we haven't touched at all. And I believe that lot comes right up to the sidewalk. There's really no space there. It's the southwest lot on Oakland, that there's that little bit of 2 feet, 18-ish, 2 feet of space between
Yeah,
the sidewalk.
but the northwest lot though too, it's, I mean, you've touched everything here. It just seems ignored to me for trying to prevent someone parking their car and shining their lights into the houses and things. And sorry I didn't pick that up earlier on other things, but it just seems like, with the screening of things in there, that's missed. The one in the southwest lot, at least that's projecting across the street back to the school. It's not as problematic to me, maybe, but that's the only thing I see. I don't have any issues with reworking the playground or removing some of those sidewalks. I think BE comes up and, costs and things, and those improvements can be made later once the park design gives you a better idea on how it's gonna connect. You're maybe putting the money in the wrong spot until that happens, so those all make a lot of sense to me.
Thank you.
Signage, agree with what you said, so I'm fine there. And lighting, if neighbors are having issues with the light levels, that needs to be addressed. So those are what I can absorb, I think makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, lighting seems advanced enough, I don't know if it dims, or not.
We should have some control over that. The lighting will, as you know, dim some just because the Fairview Avenue project will have the double row of trees on each side, or a little row of trees on each side of the sidewalk, which will start to take some of that lighting down off the neighbors' houses. Those aren't installed yet, I don't believe.
Yeah, no, and actually in a similar vein, I was noticing, walking around the school the other day, looking at things, that all of the overhead electric along Oakland has been removed. So, so you'll be able to go back into that tree lawn and plant something more shade worthy as opposed to only ornamental, which would be nice.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And, so I assume you're gonna screen the electrical equipment since it was on the plan? Okay. I don't think I have any other comments that haven't already been stated. Mayor?
It's gone remarkably well, given the circumstances we found ourselves in. Congratulations, home stretch.
Thank you. These guys really put it through.
I didn't see Andy swinging a hammer around.
He does.
Any questions or comments from anyone in the audience? Okay. So do you need a motion to?
Yeah, there's a couple variances for the signs that need to be granted. And then just confirmation of approval of the revisions to the major site plan with any of the conditions you'd like to add.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any other comments or questions, but, take a minute to think about it as far as, specific things you want to point out or mention in a motion.
What my comments were, I think they may deal with it later or whatever. I think they've done the intent of what they said they were going to do, so I'm fine without anything else. You guys, what can I say?
Motion to approve PC case 5-2023. One, approval to install 2 ground signs on a single parcel in the required front yard and side yard setbacks, but with a variance of that it is closer than 10 feet on the property line. And 2, approval of the major site plan as presented today.
I second.
Commissioner Rourke,
Yes.
Commissioner Bonjero,
Yes.
Commissioner Kaminsky,
Yes.
Commissioner Heller,
Yes.
Chairman Gentry.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
guys.
Godspeed.
Thank you.
All right, we need to take a quick break, and then we'll get back to item number 6.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, you do? I know last time we talked, you started. Maybe next. Okay.
I gotta go on Wednesday to Friday, or actually Wednesday to Trip with it, like it's blowing the line. See the place, so,
Yeah, I love it.
yeah, it's cool, so I'm trying to, it was tomorrow, I was driving up to a public workshop in the evening, and then staff.
What your project is?
So we're doing the, community master plan, so it's like their comprehensive entire city, yeah. We've got a big team, so we've got, some consultants doing transportation planning, economics, we've got the consultant, engineering consultant, engagement consultant, marketing firm, we've got another, sort of design focused, like area planning, downtown planning, some area specific plans, we call interface studios out of Philly. So it's a big team, but we're like priming it, and I'm the project manager, so I'm coordinating all the bits and pieces.
That's it. Good? All right, let's get back in session. Item number 6, 3-2023, 1661 Goodale Boulevard. Myers and Associate is the applicant, City of Grandview Heights is the owner. Go ahead and state your names, and I assume you guys are giving a presentation. Is that how this is going to work?
We're standing on this is the
Yeah,
spot.
yeah, you're on the spot, so.
My name's Peter Scott. I'm with Myers and Associates Architects. Tim Schmullenberger. I'm with MKSK Landscape Architects. You want anything to start off at all?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll just do preamble to the next 2 projects, which is just to say that the city has been endeavoring since February. We were here with these projects previously to bring them both into alignment with our available budget and to meet the scope and functional needs for both of the projects. Very happy to have both of the projects aligned now, and architects with us tonight for each project. The projects are moving ahead. I think we're about midpoint on DD for both of them, so at a good moment to bring to the commission with enough information, well known enough, while still having some time remaining in design if you do have comments to be able to incorporate those. So very pleased to bring them forward tonight and appreciate in advance your attention.
Thank you. So yeah, we're the first project to present is the new Parks and Rexon Park facility at McKinley Field. The existing site plan I wanted to start with just to kind of show I think it's in your packet because it's probably hard to see on the screen, but really the location of this new building was pretty quickly determined, and I think we talked about that last time we were here, kind of replacing the existing shelter on that plateau. There's many reasons, engineering-wise, why we need to stay at that elevation. Actually, we're going a little higher so that we can make sanitary and storm work for the site and for the building. And then I'm going to turn it over to you, Tim.
Great.
And so from a site planning standpoint, like Pete said about the engineering aspects of it, we're like very close to hitting the sanitary sewer with a gravity flow, right? So we're trying to avoid a lift station kind of a thing. So a lot of it is driven to that. We're also trying to think, further ahead into the Parks and Recreation Master Plan when that occurs, and how the community gardens area ties into this project, from walkways to the woods, and how they might connect, right? Just trying to foresee into it, even though we're not designing that, but we're trying to at least allow as much opportunity to make those connections in the future, whatever they may be from that end. So that's probably the easiest way to state that. So we're trying to keep orientation so that we can accommodate that.
And I'll touch on this when we get into the building plan a little bit further, but the location, current location where we're putting this also, in the entry points, has a visual connection when you come into the center, all the way over to this site, and then the rest of the building. So there's a little bit of a visual connection between the two buildings.
Yeah. Likely more in the winter when the leaves on the trees are gone, from that end. But we think that connections, could be, important, just as a, visual focal point from that end. This site plan shows where we're kind of painstakingly trying to fit the building on the mound, essentially, if it will, where the existing building is, while also trying to respect the existing trees that we have in there. Granted, some of the trees aren't in great shape, others are in really good shape. And so we've been sliding the building around. We still think we probably have one more slight adjustment within several feet to try and make sure we're saving an ash tree on the west and potentially the river birch that sits between the parking lot and the building. Right now we're showing the river birch coming out, but it's a pretty good size river birch. So we're trying to figure out, can we balance that one last time and try and save that. So we're, middle of DD, we're in that final engineering aspects, saving trees, balancing soil, making sure the building has the right orientation and right elevation to hit the sewer from that end. So we're in that kind of final stage. This is pretty close. The lighter green around the building, as you see, is roughly the grading limits. So obviously the current mound is not, it doesn't accommodate this building completely, so the grade will push out a little bit, and that obviously affects the trees, but this here reflects the light trees that you see are what's being saved, and the light green is basically the graded limits. And it also preserves the existing playground in place, so we don't have to do a little short-term rework of that to accommodate this project, right? Again, save that for the next phase of the Parks and Recreation work. Again, just trying to not use dollars that are going to get reworked later, right? Just trying to really be cognizant of that. From that end down there. Here we go. This here shows the existing tree plan, and the red is what's being removed. The large circle that you see on the top end is the river birch that we're, I think, with our shift, we're trying to get to a point where we can save that. So that's, I think, one of our final tweaks in there. A lot of the evergreens, if you've been out there, are very thin because they're essentially evergreens growing in a deciduous forest, so they're getting shaded out from that end. So long-term wise, they would need to come out anyway. We'll commend the city's inventory of their trees. It's very helpful. Really looking and checking that, and then when you go to the field, you've got a pretty good idea of what you're dealing with. So we find that incredibly handy with that. But this gives you an idea. I think one of the challenges that'll be that I'm sure Roselli's scratching your head a little bit is to build this building they have to travel from the parking lot into the site, and we got trees all the way. So there's going to be basically corridors that they're going to be able to access to enter it, and they're looking at that pretty hard. So a lot of these trees will be fenced off, which will limit the construction area. So it'll be a little challenging on it, but in the end, we feel it'll be very worth it because it'll look like the building's been there with the trees, the large trees around it. That's always a great look from that end. And then landscape plan wise, here you can see the materials that we're proposing and the actual locations of it. Not dissimilar to what's already out there. You can see the foundation planting is primarily towards the parking lot side. So when you go in, so when you pull into the parking lot, the building has a very finished look. It has a foundation planting. You're looking through existing trees. It's got accent trees, ornamental flowering type trees as well, as accents. Like I said, this plan still shows, the river birch coming out. If we're able to save that, then you'll see, the large tree up there where the two ornamental trees are, towards, between that kind of east end of the parking lot and the building. So that's kind of our, our last tweak within it. And that's it.
That's it. Thank you. So basically, the overall building square footage and programming hasn't changed since our last presentation. We're just around 5,139 square feet, to be exact. So, and it's really broken up through two main programs, administration offices, and then the community program. I wasn't going to spend a lot of time on that. If you have questions, we can dial back on that. And actually, before I get into the plan, I'm going to show you a model. The model and the planning is really three kind of structures, gable structures, with a lobby kind of glue holding those together. The reason we did that is to, one, define those spaces and help react to views and things within the site, but also help the building kind of change its scale so that it wasn't just one big massive building. I'll be happy to pass it. This is a working model, so feel free to beat it up if you need to. But as the main entry is from the west, so in this on the screen, the parking lot is from the north, page north. So the main entry is from the west, where there's a vestibule. That's the majority of the traffic on the day-to-day use. And that lobby space is kind of this triangular wedge shape that these three bars, rectangular bars, play off of. To the north is the administration offices. So there is a secure door and a operable window that you'll see that allows the spaces to kind of interact, but it also can be closed off, one for security reasons, or if there's other administration events happening that they need to have some more privacy. In that same bar that the administration is some mechanical spaces and also the restroom core. One thing to note here is this restroom is made up of 6 individual ADA stalls. 2 are accessed from the exterior. That will serve the park and the public during, obviously, park hours. And then 4 will serve the building internally. And then there's also a, we'll call a half bath or a quarter bath changing area, changing room in the center of the plan, just off the lobby. Based on some of the feedback we received from the community, they were interested in a non-restroom style changing space to kind of change into different outfits. The lobby also is being treated as kind of a multi-functional space. It's a gathering space. They'll have a kitchenette, coffee. When people are coming in waiting for a program, they'll be able to interact with the other residences. And then, of course, it's also the staging area to kind of get into larger events in the large activity room or the small activity room. The plan that in our packet here shows an important aspect of what we're doing with this design. We actually are creating, I'm going to get into the add alternates if that's okay. There's a base bid based on the budgets, and we think we can get into the overall budget 2 alternates, which is an extension of the roof over the small activity room, which you see in that model actually is showing that add alternate with the columns, providing some shade for an outdoor activity space for the center. This almost doubles the square footage of that use of that space because there's a big garage door that can open up and really make the interior and exterior spaces work together. And then also the second alternate would be this back porch. I know we've talked in our last meeting about front porches and the kind of grand view aesthetic of the kind of the idea of front porch. There's obviously some costs associated with all of that, and especially at the scale we're looking at. So we made it an add alternate. If you're seeing it actually in the model, the little kind of plateau at the south side of the site next to the larger gabled roof structure. And I we think this is a fabulous idea for events. The doors can open up and you can take the event out to the south side of the site, enjoy the how this building is kind of nestled into its environment, the views, and kind of the outdoor spaces. Really quick, in the packet, there's an example of some comparison to existing spaces. So the small activity space is just a little bit larger than the existing building that's on the site now, the actual event space that's on the site now. And then we compared this room as well as the space at Wyman Woods and overlaid that with the two rectangles over the new event space, and it's very similar. The exterior elevations have not changed dramatically from the aesthetic that was presented last time, but we're working with asphalt shingle roof, cementitious cement board and batten siding, some stone veneer, which I have a sample with me tonight, and obviously a lot of glass opening up the space. We made comparisons in our last meeting about this space and how disconnected we are from 5 feet outside the building. We're really making a purposeful effort to open these spaces up and allow that, connection to the outside environment. This is a view looking from the west side, looking east into the main entry. You can see the covered extension of the small activity room, providing some shade and really kind of creating this architectural gesture to the existing playground, which is just west, just to the right of this image. To the left of the main entry is the administration offices, kind of a lower structure. This is also the closest structure to the neighboring property, so we want to keep this one the kind of the smaller size structure because of its proximity. From the east side looking west, this is what we'll call our secondary entrance. We think there's a need for having an entry on the park or the garden side, so we've created this entry. Some out of need because of emergency egress, but also out of convenience for people coming through from the east side being able to enter into the building. That relates back to my earlier comment where there's this kind of visual core as you enter into the building, either from the east or west side. You can see all the way through the building to what's outside. This is the view just looking from the south side back up to the north to the building. You can see the raised patio, the porch area, and the large event space to the right, and the small activity room with the covered area to the left. Coming inside the building, this is the view actually looking west, but looking at the front door and an idea of having a branding moment, also with maybe a built-in bench kind of in that transition zone as you're coming in and out of the building during different seasons. Just inside that lobby, I mentioned earlier this kind of operable window for the administration offices. They're very interested in having this connection between the lobby and obviously the activities within the space, and having this ability to kind of open up the glass wall to have truly an open space, but at times closing that down and having it be secure. Spinning around in the same location, looking at the entrance into the large event space in the lobby. We're looking at obviously utilizing durable floors, a lot of polished concrete, maybe colored concrete floor. In the event space would be a wood floor, basically a gymnasium floor, so it's really multi-purpose floor. But then a lot of wood tones and natural materials within this center just to kind of warm up those spaces. This is turning just a little bit to the right at the kitchenette and some of the tables and activities that these kind of higher top tables provide. Meeting spaces. Looking a little further right into the kitchenette in the lobby. This is still in the lobby, a little bit further south. This is the window wall that looks out to the south of the site. You see a little bit of that porch railing just outside the windows, but built-in seating that will double as additional storage for the center. The large event space, obviously this is a multi-purpose space. This is being shown here as kind of an event banquet maybe, or some sort of dinner event, but very voluminous. So we can stand almost tall enough I can almost touch the ceiling. Here we're springing up around 14 feet with trusses, and then goes all the way up to about 20 feet at the top of the roof. So very, very large space volume-wise, but in the end it's about the same footprint. It just feels much larger because of the height of the ceiling. Obviously, celebrating a little bit of the structure of the space, so exposing the wood structure, exposing the HVAC systems, of course, lighting, and other features of the space because of, out of necessity, but also trying to maximize the space, the volume of our space. Looking the other direction in the same space, we also, we have this storage room that is part of the requirements of the program, which we're looking at having large kind of mirrored walls. A lot of the residences, based on the uses of the space, are interested in having the mirrored wall for fitness classes and other events. So we're utilizing this storage room as that wall with these movable barn doors that have mirrored as well. Inside the small activity room, there's another small kitchenette, dual sinks, one art sink, one hand sink. But again, exposed structure, high volume, multi-purpose space. And then same room looking towards that garage door, looking out to the covered patio. Inside the offices, I bet you that's not too dark. Looking at a workstation for six desks, kind of as a center workstation. Some private offices to the left here, and then one additional workroom or office to the right. And then looking back, same office, looking back at that operable window door. In this image. Looking out to the south at the people playing in the park. So that's the presentation.
Future playground.
Future playground. Any questions or?
This, I have a question. There's a lot of dogs in this.
I keep hearing problems with the renderings. Dogs,
It's kind of blurry
allowed
out.
in the park.
It's a deer. That's a
It's
deer.
a deer.
It is.
Very
It's a deer.
short deer.
It's a dove.
Yeah, I can walk through the framework for planning commission, zoning consideration. So I think, a couple items, there's actually a couple items lingering that I'll have to bring back later as staff for a recommendation. There is right-of-way still. Actually, I've asked our city engineers to verify all the documents that I have. Looks like there's still right-of-way dedicated that goes right through the park, happens to go right underneath our building. So we'll be looking at abandoning that, but I'm in process on that. And since it's just a city, we can overlap some of our processes a little bit. In the future, what's that?
What was the right way?
So what goes up from there? Irwin or
Point it out.
Fairview? Yeah,
Yeah. You can see on the survey here,
It's
yeah.
the little platted street.
where those pine trees kind of right on the right of way.
Yeah.
Those 5 pine trees.
Yeah. The pine trees are all right on the
Yeah, there you go.
right away.
Yeah, so we'll be bringing back a combined parcel, once we get information from the engineer, but that's neither here nor there necessarily right now tonight. There's no storm system, down in here, you may recall. So, the engineers are looking at, are getting together. Ferris is working with, the engineer for the building, to make sure that the proposal will work as required. Let's see, I think, last time when we came here, we also talked about, this is also a little bit of an aside, but talked about relocating the food waste recycling that's right now down by the old service center to an enclosure near the turnaround for Wallace Gardens. And we got together, we kind of presented that in a couple different venues and nobody really loved it, so we got together and looked at some other options and in fact found a different place for it altogether that, so it won't be located down in Wallace Gardens. We're gonna be able to locate it off of Douglas, kind of behind the old Fine Line building. So it'll be in a much more discreet location. Let's see, obviously the Spaces and Places plan supports a use for the Good Allen Grandview site for the building. The new city building being there necessitated this building to move. Our 2007 Parks and Rec Master Plan had recommended augmenting the shelter at McKinley, and so actually the building is not super dissimilar from what was recommended in the Parks Master Plan as far as location and size and use. So kind of consistent with our planning documents from that perspective. Let's see, so we would really have pulled the scope for this project in to really be just about the building. MKSK looked at the playground options for us, and in presenting those to the Parks and Facilities Advisory Board, the feeling was that that scope belongs better in the long-term, larger Parks Master Plan anticipated to start next year, so that the playground here will be maintained. Similarly, I think last time we were with you, we were trying to find a way to fit upgrades to the concessions building into this project scope, and it really turns out to be quite an expensive undertaking for what you get. There's also concern about maybe changes to anticipated use related to the potential rails to trails conversion, just a variety of different things that they felt that's also better studied in the future Parks Master Plan. To accommodate the short-term need, we've added now 2 more restrooms. So 2 restrooms will be dedicated parks restrooms, and 4 restrooms will be dedicated interior restrooms in the new building. So those are just some considerations. As Pete and Tim mentioned, Mike and I went down to look at the trees today again, and we're still kind of fussing with exactly where the building lands to try to miss 3 particularly important trees. So it may yet move a little bit on the site, but essentially where it's located, just sliding a little bit around that location. As far as zoning specifics, there's no side or rear yards established for the P Parkland zoning district. The use contemplated here as a recreation use is included in the district designation for permitted uses. There's no lot coverage identified for the zoning. The amount of lot coverage that we have is not overly burdensome to the site here. We're not adding any parking. Parking has been studied and determined to be adequate such as it is. There is a intent to add 3 parking lot lights that will have cutoffs as well to light the existing lot, and then of course there'll be some on-building lighting to light the site as well. The loading can be accommodated in the existing parking lot. Signage has yet to be developed, so we may, come back to you at a certain moment. We're not sure what the building's going to be called yet, so we need to wait on that. And then the exterior design is in keeping with our brand and the front porch idea for a lot of our parks buildings, in keeping with the neighborhood kind of general culture. So those are the considerations relative specifically to zoning. It's pretty uncomplicated, really, and obviously the city very much looks forward to the project, supports the project, and no concerns from police, fire, building department, all good. It's a smallish building. So seeking your approval tonight to move forward with construction.
Excellent. Grace, what do you got?
Not much. I appreciate you addressing some of the comments we made last time. I do like the wood floor on the facility. I like what you talked about, the trees, trying to save and minimize the damage. I hate when, developer comes, tears everything down and then starts planting the sticks on the ground. So I appreciate that effort. Actually, I was curious, and it's just curiosity, the 2 houses close to it, especially the one close to it, is there any screening, or maybe they already have their fence, has there been or maybe they don't care, maybe they do want the view to that building? Do we know?
I can't speak for the homeowners, but I know that the building doesn't have a lot of windows on that location, and we are screening the door to the restroom. That is a single door that goes into 2 separate restrooms, so it's a vestibule to 2 restrooms. But we're still providing it's a semi-screen trellis, we're calling it, because you can see through it from the parking lot for security reasons. We don't want to create a kind of a dead zone for visual connection to that for the police, but then also providing from the angle of the homeowners, it's blocking the door, so they can't see it.
Yeah, and I also appreciate the new bathrooms. I think it's more modern to have the stalls. I know there's a lot, when I'm here, a lot of parents are coming and, where do you take the girl, if is it that and stuff. So I think an independent stall, it's just better than women and
ago, so I appreciate that change too. Even though it was more for having the access from the outside, but I think the way you solved two things, problems I had. So, I don't have any comments, except, appreciate it and I like what I see.
Okay, thanks, Francis. Sarah?
I don't have anything, I think it looks great. I like the effort to try to save as many trees. I appreciate all the work to move the building around and try to preserve that. But yeah, I think that looks good.
Yeah.
Just more question about material selection. What's presented is what we're kind of going with. There's a budget, colors included.
Yes.
So it's probably a global comment, but like, I feel there's a lot of black and like our other, facilities are more just natural wood, and although we're using it a little bit, I'm a little bit fearful that we're just gonna have a bunch of black things throughout the town, and it's gonna be like a statement of when it's built. And maybe natural wood would have been better, but I don't feel strongly. I think it looks great. I think it looks contemporary. And I don't necessarily think these things can't look like the time that they were built. And so I think you've incorporated good elements of what we've done in the past, and you're advancing it in some ways. So overall, I guess my only concern would be like maybe not black for the board bed, but I don't have a color recommendation or anything like that. So that's kind of where I land. Everything else, I think it looks great. I think the community will really like it. Sad to see that we can't advance the park plan yet, but I know it's coming, so thank you.
Mark?
Question on trash. Where's trash in the overall site plan?
Yeah, invite the director to speak to how trash is handled today and how it will be handled in the future. Mike?
Trash currently would be handled as it is in this building. It's addressed on a daily basis and taken off-site.
Okay, so there's nothing outside, any dumpsters or stuff like that that need to be incorporated or anything?
Not currently.
The mechanicals, is that gonna be on the flat part of the roof? Or?
There are 2 units on the flat part above the lobby that are screened from most of the gables.
Okay.
And then there are 2 units that are inside the mechanical room. We are utilizing the attic above the restrooms for storage and some AV and IT equipment. So there is technically a second floor, but it's really an attic. And there might be some equipment up there, but yeah, it's all up on there will be no condensers around the outside.
Around the outside. Nice clean look around there and stuff.
360.
So, is all the electrical being run underground to the building, I'm assuming, not going off holes with wires or anything?
Our intent is to run it underground as much as possible.
Okay. And I know AEP has the big lines going down the street, and I just don't want, it's budget type stuff too, but hoping that would be all underground. Your site plan with the big light green circle around the building gets really close to the property line of the neighbor. So have you resolved how the water's flowing off that side of the building, that it's not going into their property?
Yes. Yeah, the reason we've left that X amount of room there is to make sure that the water that even today passes down through there, because that parking lot and that green space north of there travels around that corner. So the idea is that we're lower than the corner, and then we'll rise back up to the foundation of the building. But we're also exposing the building foundation, so the grade falls around it.
Yeah, you've got some lines of 27, 28, 29, so everything looks like it's falling towards their property. And I don't see any grade lines on their property, so I don't see that it's.
Correct.
Just as that neighbor, I wouldn't want more water going on the property.
We pay the closest attention to all grading in that one area.
Okay.
And because the building keeps moving around at that, we're.
Right.
It's a pinch point.
Yeah, so we know water is gonna naturally, it currently does flow around the site based on the plinth that's built there now. We're maintaining that, and we're just making sure it's managed well and not backing up into the neighborhood.
Just want to make sure for the city that we're not causing a problem that way.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right. And city engineers having our team's engineer look at trying to capture the parking lot storm. Like today, all that goes into the park. So the parking lot drains all the way to the park, all the way to the railroad tracks. And so they've suggested, which Court is looking into, picking up, the parking lot and everything north of that in a couple inlets along the lot, which would cut that runoff in half from that. So sort of think way out on that, which will help that condition as well, right at that pinch point.
Okay. Just making sure you,
Yep.
that's all I had. Okay.
Yep.
And again, I agree with everybody, this is gonna be an exciting addition to the city, so thank you for your hard work on it.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with everyone else. I really like it. It looks great. The sanitary, talking about, it sounds like you're trying to find that sweet spot of how high do you need it to go and how low can you keep it?
Yeah.
I mean, is that?
It's sort of out of the
pretty
street,
exact?
sanitary is pretty high. It's, the elevation's raising up as you go west.
Yeah.
So our building, we actually raised our finished floor from the existing 1 foot to help get gravity flow to that.
Right. That's what I was wondering if it's like right on exact or if there's some.
It's a little, we have a little wiggle room.
Okay.
But it's, you know, it's within specs, it's within tolerances.
Yep.
Okay.
But we don't want to get, you know, I don't want to have to raise the building another foot. That's going to push that out of the ground even further. It's going to cost. And, but also I don't want to push the building too far south because that's then the run from the building to that sanitary becomes a problem.
Right.
And we were very interested in not having a lift station.
Yeah.
That's not something we want to do.
Yeah. I'd say we're within probably 4 to 5 inches of finished floor right now. That's how close it is with the civil. So if we slide the building a little bit south for these, for the trees, then that will eat up to 4 to 5 inches for in the sanitary slope.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's literally right at that point.
Okay. And I had the same question as Mark about the neighbors, but it sounds like it's something you are considering.
Yeah, and I think the building, based on these plans, is going to shift 5 feet or so further south.
Yeah. Probably a little west.
And a little west, so that's going to open that gap up a little further.
Right. We should get more clearance in there.
And you said there's going to be a couple of drains added to the parking lot?
It's supposed to be looked at. The city engineer suggested because since the site really has no outlet, right? The water goes down, gets trapped against the railroad tracks. And if we tried to connect it, we would open it up to flooding from all the other parcels around it.
Yeah.
Because it's lower than the surrounding
Yeah,
area.
it's lower than
Anything
everything.
floods, it would just fill up and become a big pond.
Yeah.
Right. So it, engineering wise, it won't be connected to the storm system, other than the north part of the site has storm running
Take
through
some
it.
off of it.
And so we want to pick part of the site up, toss it in there, and then there's less going into the site.
Yeah.
It's a significant square footage of parking lot that we control that and send it to the north, to the street.
Right.
That'll help us.
Right.
Yeah, I think anything would help because it stays wet down there for so long,
Yeah.
and then especially in the ball diamond too. So
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank
Yeah.
you.
It's unusual to have a site that doesn't have an outlet.
Yes.
That works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so.
All right, thank you guys.
Sure thing.
Mayor.
Well, I'm obviously really pleased to bring this forward. I want to actually thank this team, this building, and I actually really want to thank staff too, Director Patterson, his crew, and Director Kelker, and really the rest of the safety services and administrative team worked on this and have met extensively on this, and this team has a lot of patience with us because the building, it's in our really our most precious park, and it's got to be all things to all people and do a lot of different things, and I kind of think we got there. So, congratulations to you for really when, of course, we know you've loved making the model. But seriously, we didn't set out to do this. We realized very quickly this was needed to enable, and it was kind of, how do we solve this problem? And really, I think we made an opportunity out of it. I agree with the thoughts that once the community sees it, it will be actually much more utilized than this particular building, and the setting is just beautiful. It's really one of our most beautiful places in town. And so I think I've said all I really needed to say the last time around on this, but thanks for considering that. We're very wholeheartedly coming forward and asking for approval on this.
I mean, looking at some of those renderings, I feel like Mike needs to sell some coffee there for people that want to work there, work out of that space. It would look nice. Any questions or comments from audience members, attendees?
Yes, I have
some comments. I am the property owner of the house that is closest to the.
Well, can you state your name and your address?
Susan DeLay, I'm at 1631 Goodale.
Okay. That's the one right next to it?
Right.
Okay, all right.
Right. And I am concerned about stormwater. So whatever you can do to mitigate that, I would really appreciate. Also, I'm wondering if there's gonna be, since we're in such close proximity, is there gonna be any buffering or anything, shrubbery planted to kind of screen?
Yeah, right now we have ornamental trees, and as Pete spoke about, that part of the building, there's really not any windows on that side. So so there won't be any views kind of coming out towards your backyard.
Okay.
And so any kind of ornamental trees that we would put in there, right, would tend to be that buffer up against, the building wall.
Okay.
That's where it's headed.
All right.
And you can see on this plan here, all these circles represent all those existing trees that are staying.
Right.
And then there's a couple of new trees that are happening here, and then, this is, the building's gonna shift just a little bit further, but this darker bar is that screen, the screen of the door.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a little off here in this plan, but it's,
There is a big tree right at the corner.
Right at the corner.
right there, that's the one we're trying to save.
Yeah.
Right now, in this
Yeah.
particular plan, it's not gonna make it, but we're gonna push the building up.
Yeah.
It's a big tree, and it takes up a lot.
Yeah.
And how far is it offset from the property line, the building that you're constructing?
Right now it's about like 12 feet.
This particular
In
plan
this
is
plan.
12 feet, it's gonna be.
I think it's gonna be more.
Okay.
Plus or minus.
Okay.
You'll probably get to 15,
But it's also,
15
it's
feet
the
plus.
one-story structure. When I say it's a two-story, I
Yeah.
mentioned that earlier, it's an attic, so it's just a gable space.
Yeah.
But that's the lowest, it's really that's the lowest roof we have in the property, because we know that being responsible for your product, so.
Tim,
Okay. All right.
did you want to show her the model too?
Sure.
So if you're able to save that tree, you think 15 feet from the property line is what you're
Yeah.
thinking?
Yeah, we should end up at least 15.
So this, your property's right here.
Okay.
So this is the lowest gable. Next to that is the larger one, this is the south.
Okay.
And go around, one that was kind of flat out, or give you light motion.
Okay.
And then that version goes here with the screen.
Looks good. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Any other questions or comments? Good. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, commission members, any other discussion or, a motion?
I'd like to make a motion for PC 3-2023-1661 West Goodell Boulevard to approve the major site plan review as noted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Bonjorno?
Yes.
Commissioner Rook?
Yes.
Commissioner Gaskuski?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Chairman Venture?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, last but not least, item number 5, PC case number 2-2023, 1525 Goodell Boulevard, City of Greenview Heights, Ernie McHenry Architecture. Oh, thank you very much. Hooked up here. I get the feeling you think they're untrustworthy, is that what you're?
Trustworthy.
Can you raise your right hand and answer in the affirmative, swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Make sure you state your name, please.
Sure, Kevin Ayers, Ernie McHenry Architecture.
Scott Erdy McHenry Architecture.
Tim Schmallenberger, MKSK Landscape Architects.
Great, thank you. Thanks for having us. It's great to be back here to present how we developed the project since our last meeting in February. Just a little bit of a refresher for the site and context, and also the history of the place. I'm from Columbus in this area, so it's very exciting for me, having gone to Ohio State and grew up around here, about the history of the place and specifically Grandview. It's really exciting that basically we're at the centennial of the first firehouse municipal building, so it's a very exciting time. As you know, the site has quite a bit of landscape around it, and so we've been working very hard to be protective of that as we design this. And there's a lot pushing from the inside out, and we've been equally looking at the outside in. But really, as that site you see right in the center, is surrounded by parkland. It's quite beautiful, but it's also the gateway from Columbus into Grandview Heights. So the idea of how that gateway is enhanced and how this building works, us maintaining the green space along Grandview Avenue, and also maintaining the views, and also being respectful of the future rails, the trails, and the solar access of the site. As you know, there's a lot of industrial history in this part of the city, and that's something that's, I think, important to the place, and particularly this part of Grandview. And so we've looked at that and really looked at some of the context around that, the buildings in the immediate area, and some of the things around Grandview Heights. The study by MBBJ really talked about how that green space would open up as it gets to the park. And for us, that's very exciting, and was coincident with what we were thinking too as well, about really widening that out. Because the real benefit for everyone is that green space then becomes a contiguous bit of green that wraps all the way around this part of the city. So it's really exciting, especially the way Goodale turns, and then the access to the pool is very nice. And maintaining that continuous green space of our site, and also Wyman Woods and to the west as well. So it's something we've worked hard to enhance. Kevin's going to review a little bit about the submission that you guys had and some things that we developed since then, just to keep you informed of where we are.
Yes, thank you. So the submission followed a similar form from our preliminary submission, although it's all on construction drawings that we'll be working with as we move forward. On our previous presentation, some of the comments asked us to address issues about signage location, views coming from the southwest, pedestrian connections. We think we picked up most of those, or all of those items in what we showed here. I'm not going to go over all the 30 pages that we submitted. I think you have them in front of you. But just a few highlights addressing some of the code issues. One about the parking. The program remains the same. The building got a little bit bigger as we right-sized the fire apparatus bay, but that didn't increase parking requirements. It got a little taller because of a need for more space for what was going on above the first floor ceilings. So the parking areas requirements sort of remain the same. There's between the fire department and police department max shifts and the city business, there's a need for 78 spaces based on the code. We're providing 85 spaces on the site. When you add in the council chamber area and its requirements, that you can pack in a bit more, that bumps up the total number to 122. One might argue that you wouldn't be using council chambers at the same time as you're filling the building with city business, but with that 122 spaces, we don't quite have those spaces on site, but we have part of the adjacent project, the Glendale improvements will add another 20 spaces, and we're across the street from Wyman Woods. This is all similar to what we presented last time, so we feel it makes sense to have this variance for the parking. Some of the other issues, setbacks aren't really a concern for parkland zoning, but with the building getting a little bigger, it pushed more to the west, so now our setback from the property line at Grandview Heights, Grandview Avenue is 47 feet, and the setback from the Glendale property is 27, and that allows for the addition of a future fourth apparatus bay when the time comes to
buy the next piece of equipment. All the parking, actually dimensions, I think are on another site plan, but they all meet the zoning standards. These two drawings just show the phasing and the demolition of buildings that we're going to keep the building we're in now until we absolutely have to finish out the site work on the northern part. This site plan shows the parking dimensions, how we meet the 9 foot, 19 feet. It shows the back secured lot, which has an area of covered carport, which is critical to how the police need to function, be able to get to their cars. There's 16 covered spots here, 5 there. Technically, it's an ad alternate because of the way it's going to be bought. If the funding can be bought within this, it will. You know, we wanted to address it on the drawing. So, you know, assuming that it will get built, that is something that is technically an accessory building that goes beyond 300 square feet. It's, I think, 4,800 square feet. So again, to meet the needs of the police department, I think that's critical to keep that. The other thing is that secured parking is surrounded by a fence, which is critical to protect their vehicles and the people that serve there. It's a 6 foot high fence, which is a foot higher than what the zoning code requires. Thanks. You asked for the material, site material and planting plans and okay, we'll show the details on that. This is a pretty dry drawing. In the presentation, we have some better pictures. And then the drainage issues. This is something that actually has developed since we sent this to you. In looking more at the southwest views, we realized that there's some great Norway pines existing there on a berm that would help screen off that parking area. And so we're going to keep that, and that changes that area that right now shows some water collection down there is going to remain as is. And this is just a site plan noting the relationships of the parkings in the front and the back. And we also have revised the plan on the inside hasn't changed a whole lot. The council chamber is still where it was. The lobby relationships are still where they are. And there's no zoning issue there. There is still an issue with the height. Actually, there is an added issue with the height. I think before we were below the 35 foot max height by pushing the building up for the mechanical. The roof is only at 28.4, but the typical parapet's 30.4. So around most of the building, it won't be that high, but the mechanical screen and the need for some of the equipment will push it up to about 38 feet. So that is another place where we're asking for a variance. So that's, I guess there's one more. We included some images of the materials, and that's something that changed from the preliminary. We've settled on a brick color and some of the metal panel that's incorporated the color of that, and also advanced some of the other landscape materials. But you'll see them in the presentation as we go forward.
Some larger pictures coming up.
Yeah.
So a little bit about the site design and the building design, just to refresh everybody. We 3 major departments: city business shown in green, the fire department in red, and the police department. It's quite a complex orchestration of all those functions. It is a very functional building, utilitarian. There's a lot of needs and requirements that drive much about what the building is, especially it's on its inside and access points from the outside. But the overall building is developed where you have fire to the left-hand side there, police to the right, and then city business on the top on the right-hand side, pushing itself into that park area, and then fire and police on the left-hand side of that. So overall, the building is very compact, and I think that serves the city well and its economy. It is a very complex building, and it's an expensive building because of the amount of the equipment and requirements that it needs to meet. So we've been working very hard with staff, the mayor and her team to make sure that we get the most value for Grandview Heights on this. Just some overview of the site plan. We've developed this a little bit in terms of some of the drainage that Kevin spoke about. You have basically the stormwater management is handled through some key sort of rain gardens that surround the building. So the roof water will go into that. Those plantings will help clean that. The water from here will then go into these areas here. Tim will talk about that in more detail. And just a little bit of big picture things, handicap parking next to the building. There is trash here. It's accessed off of Glendale. I think there's some comments about that. We've pulled the generator and the transformer a little bit closer to the building. They will be inside that fencing of that. And then as Kevin pointed out, there is expansion for the building here in terms of an additional fire bay, and also the ability to expand in this direction for additional office space for the city. And then if you look closely in this, you can see all of the turning radiuses for the trucks, including the future bay in the fire apparatus bay. So you can go to the next slide.
Tim, you want to? Yeah, I'll jump in. This next few slides kind of explain the detailed planting plan that we've got developed to date. And so, we still need some additional staff comments, but where we're heading with the, we call it kind of the landscape moat, which is around the building, and you'll see the section where basically, the building's just a little higher, slopes, into this low area where we'll filter the water. We'll also detain in there a bit. And the strategy, revised strategy as we be going forward on the storm system is to try not to put much of the storm system into pipes, because the minute you get it into a pipe, you're at a certain depth, and you have to try and hit the inverts. And there's been some challenges with some of the utilities and access to this here, so that's being worked out. The southwest corner, which I'll show later as well, where we're able to save the big evergreen screen and mounding area there now. We thought we were going to needed to use that for detention. We're not now, so all that gets saved, which helps on budget. And the images that you see here on this first plate here, for the landscape mode, we're using basically, call it some very fine grasses and sedges in there. The sedges are in more the wet areas, but their texture is very similar. So as the downspouts from the roof spill out into this area, they'll essentially run down this small slope, get trapped, by the landscape moat edge, which is, essentially a curb with a kind of a 20-inch wall on the backside. You don't see it from the street. It looks like a curb from that end, and it's also a passive security for the building. Like if a car or a truck tried to run up into there to ram the building, they get hung up on this 20-inch basically wall around it. So we try to build in a lot of that to it. The imagery of the plant material you'll see in there. I think some of the debate is how much other plant material in accents or bulbs do we want to pop out of this very grass-like soft edge around the building. And then the rest of the site would be, mowed lawn, much like what, is here today and used, as we saw earlier, by, T-ball team, playing out here. So the idea is to, preserve that use out there as well. And in fact, even maybe open it up a little more with some of the removal of some of the older trees, out here in the corner from that end. And so that if you go to the next slide, oh, I got it. You did? Got it, yeah. The front parking area, if you remember the image from the last time where it had kind of the large sycamore, California sycamores, that were essentially shading the parking lot. This scheme, stays right with that. So this whole front lawn is basically, and parking area is all sycamore trees popping out of, pavement or landscape. And the idea is that over time it'll canopy way up, so you essentially drive into a room. And the parking, we're trying to desperately to disguise the parking as not parking with that. So you'll see, it's a very simple scheme, large trees with ornamental grasses with it. And we have like a low hedge, if you will, an accent plant in front of the fire drive just to try and take down some of the view of that 40 foot plus drive there. So from the street, it looks more green, even though there's a large apron. That the trucks, use to, to leave the facility and get to an emergency with that. So again, trying to keep it very simple, let the architecture read, which is kind of contrast to the rest of the city, right? Where it's got a lot of trees, a lot of vegetation on the ground plane, right? This would be simpler. Lots of trees, but ground plane very simple from the street side. On the back side, it's more kind of functional in aspects. The red circles you see on the image there are basically maple trees to help throw shade onto the patios, that were for staff and for fire, a department staff in that area, since that faces south and it's on a parking lot. Scott talked about the generator, the transformers, right? So we're down to we're in the midst of the engineering nitty gritty here on this, and the dumpsters, you can see how they're shown to be accessed from Glendale Avenue. Street trees along Douglas would be smaller because they have to be under the power lines that exist there, and so I think we've got some non-fruiting crab apples called out for that, which is in this scheme here as well. And most of these trees in this scheme are either remaining, which is the screen that exists today of the Norway spruce and some crab apples that are on the mound is that upper left-hand photo, which puts up a pretty tall screen. You won't see the building when you're approaching from Grandview. You'll see glimpses of something there, but because of that screen remaining, it'll do a pretty good job screening that backside. I think the police chief was pretty interested, in keeping that, just to keep the views, to the where his cars are and the Sally Port and all that stuff behind kind of a screen. We've also used that area to transplant some of the trees that are from this site that are of a size that we can transplant and utilize that in an area that between the screen and the parking. We may sprinkle some picnic tables out in that lawn area that staff could probably use instead of being on the on the terraces. So they kind of have a choice from that end. So we're trying to again use all the site, on it, and Scott can walk you through kind of a model that that he has in this as well. But saving the existing screen of the evergreens, certainly the trees along Grandview Avenue will give this feeling that this building has been here for a while, at least from the Grandview side, because all those trees are existing. And that's always, we've always found that to be a good, kind of a good thing. All right, guys.
So from an aerial of the overall building, you can see how the corner of that is maintained, view of the corner of the building where the council chambers are. This is the screening buffer that's going to remain. You can see that the parking lot is really not a parking lot, but it's really a park where you park your car. And it'll have a very nice feel to it. And the buffering that will screen that fire apron. We've also been working on the facade in terms of finalizing its patterning relative to the interior spaces along there and really making enhancements to how it all works. A quick overview of the plan just to give you a sense or context for the upcoming images. You enter, the public enters from this side. There'll be a reception window, transaction window that similar to what happens now. It'll be a little bit enhanced from that. There's a safe room if you're in danger to come in there. An elevator that gets you up, and there's a stair. It's both an access stair, but also a bleacher stair, so you can sit there and have small group discussions. It's facing the historic apparatus bay, public restrooms, and this really represents kind of the secure line of the building, safety for folks inside. And then on the back side, you have a separate entry for fire to go into their space, city business to be able to get upstairs. They can go around and use the elevator, and then police. And there's also a bunch of internal components which are related to police activities there. On the second floor, you see over the top area of the fire bays, and then the dormitory, and the sort of men's locker room, women's locker room, and then the fitness gym, and then defensive tactics training for police and fire, and then city business here. Council chambers here at the top of the stair, with the dais immediately opposite of that. It'll be a wonderful view as you come up, framed by the woods around it, so it'll really sit within a wooded area, so we're very excited about that. As Kevin mentioned, some of the materials, a masonry facade that is in these very thin reeds. Between those reeds, we have an accent of a diachromatic finished metal, which actually has a change in coloration to it, as you see from different angles. So there's just a hint of that will be a very nice sort of feature to that. And then wood ceiling in the lobby and also the council chambers, and pulling itself across into the first portion of the fire bays to bring that warmth throughout. So you can see here how that materiality is distributed, the accents along the edges of that. Brick is the primary material, wood along the ceilings, and then some frosted glass in the fire bays. As Kevin said, the overall facade, you can see that the top of the parapet is at 30 feet, and then there's some height at actually in that order to get a stair that goes to the roof enclosed like a doghouse stair, like that. And one of the things that we're doing with the facade that really helps the scale is there's a horizontal banding line across here which creates a datum, almost like a water course across the building. And that does a couple of things. One is it allows us to minimize windows in areas that don't want windows for security, police areas like that, but it allows the windows to be from 7 feet up, so you get a lot of clear story light. So you still get daylight views of the sky, but you're still protecting those folks, the first responders who are inside there doing work that we all greatly appreciate. From the corner, so approaching along Grandview, this is the signage. I meant to point that out. I'll point that out in an upcoming plan. These are the existing trees along Grandview Avenue. So you can see the building and the screening that exists from the existing berm, and then you see the building protrude out into that space. So here you see the effect of the color of the brick and then those reeds in terms of the space. So this will have an iridescent quality that changes slightly as you see it or walk around it. And then you see council chambers, the main primary public space of the building highlighted on that corner. And as you come around to the front, the lobby is very clear. So we're really balancing an expression of the functionality of the inside while balancing it with the overall building as a singular building for the city. From that corner, you see the landscape rain garden that goes around it, which also provides the protection, as Tim said. And it's really going to be a very nice sort of base for that building. So we're looking for a contrast between the lawn, which will have a more sort of soft, like manicured feel, compared to the more robust plants that are in that rain garden, and then the building sort of rising up out of that. So we're very excited about that aspect. Here's a view from the corner looking at the fire base. So you see that hedge that works along there. You can see how the parking area is really part of that landscape that goes across. One of the things that we're asking for is an interpretation of the landscape buffer around parking. We're actually turning it between the cars so that you really feel like you're in this space, which you can see on the plans. And then you see the fire bay there on the left. Some obscurity in terms of frosted glass for the firefighters that are in there working, some vision through there, but light going through, and some signage that indicates engine 51. So as you go along the street, you can see how that sits within that landscape. You'll see moments of that base that wrap around it. You can see the buffering that we're trying to create with the parking. And then this green space that's just off image here will allow water to be processed. And also each of these planters are actually holding water off the parking lot. So all the water, we're trying to completely eliminate connection to stormwater sewer piping, right? To try to do it the way nature intended, is that it absorbs ultimately into the ground. So we're very excited about that and the way the building's going to feel on the site. So that's kind of a feel how it looks. Wanted to point out a little bit about some things I forgot to say. You asked about signage. So we're showing a monument sign that we pulled within the property line here. We pulled it down to the intersection where folks would go in, so there's a clarity between where you see the sign and where you go in. And so I think that's an enhancement. And also a monument sign here, which would match the materiality of the building, which could then be replicated if you so chose on the other side of the street to really put a balanced threshold at the entry. Can you see this all right on that angle?
Yeah.
And then again, a little bit about the lobby sequence. A lot of what goes on in here is not necessarily a public moment. Hopefully we all don't spend a little time in some of those rooms. But the way the public comes in and the way it opens itself up, we worked hard to really create an amazingly gracious lobby with very limited square footage. So you can see it as it exists here within that space, and then that stair that goes up. So when you see that double height glass, and again, we're on the north side of the building, which is a great thing to have, right, for that, because you can get a lot of glass without a lot of solar gain. And so looking at that facade, it's going to do very nicely in terms of letting a lot of natural light in without glare. And we are creating a few skylights that we're positioning right now. We're studying exactly where they are, that can actually highlight some of the stuff in the lobby from the sun coming towards you. So we're excited about that and how it feels. And you can see how the plaza, the parking lot, feels more like a forecourt in a European building, right, out in front of a civic building. Some of the materiality of the finished palette of the interiors, we're using a wood ceiling, and then we're bringing that brick on the inside. We're bringing that brick inside to the facade that's just back from the lobby, and that's for aesthetics. It's got a very tactile feel, but it's also for security, so that becomes part of the ballistic resistance of that wall. So I think it's a good thing to do, and it doesn't seem that way, right? It doesn't want to look like a hardened facility. When you look the other way, you see the historic fire apparatus, and you can see the steps that lead to council chambers. And we were very deliberate about the way we position that. So when you see activity on those stairs from the outside, that angle tells you where the public space is. So the volume of the lobby then leads you up to that public space, which ultimately ends in that corner, which is much more glass, where the flags are that you'll see in a moment. And then once up on top of those stairs, looking back at, you can see the scale of the lobby. And we're using a wood paneled ceiling that will have openings in it that allow us to sort of position mechanical things and some flexibility in that. And here you can see the skylights as they come down, positioning those to highlight the truck and to put pools of light in that lobby in very specific ways. There are some meeting spaces that are at the second floor, so there's a couple of conference rooms that can be used before any kind of activity within the council chambers as needed with that. And then you see looking back the other way. And so then looking towards council chambers, you can see that ceiling that goes all the way back into council. It becomes really a unifying place about where the public spaces are within that. You can see some of the conference spaces to the left. As we go into council chambers, you can see how that space is really framed by nature, which I think we're very excited about in terms of the building, especially this view where you see the wraparound. And that goes back to that first slide where it talked about how the continuity of green space around this is one of the best assets we as architects have to work with, the landscape architects, is to really enhance that, protect it, and through not only the environmental things that we're doing, but through the appreciation of it. So sometimes when you see something in a picture frame, you appreciate it as important. So what we're doing is we're framing these views of the parks around it, both to the north and to the west. So it's very exciting the way that is. So here you can see the overall view, and I apologize, you're going to see something you haven't seen before, but which is a little bit of sun shade we're looking at on the backside, which would be a fabric that might be used in conjunction with the trees, but not very sure about all that. So you can see the enclosed parking, the gated, the fenced-in parking. You can see behind that berm some picnic tables here, which will be able to be accessed not only by the public, but also from a gate that's in that. There's an access gate from the back here, opening gate here. So these are those coverings that this is police and this is fire. A lot of their equipment is extremely expensive, and it's also great when there's an emergency not to have your car covered with snow, right? So it is an important part of that. And then you can see how that green space along that zone of the industrial buildings and the way this idea that green comes across. So that's why it's very important to maintain that linearity and then let that landscape flow through that space in that condition. And also this highlights the natural features of stormwater management. So in a way, we're celebrating some of these things which are good to do, the idea of processing the stormwater in a way which nature intends, and letting it also do some things that nature didn't intend, which provide security for the building around it without it being overt, right? So a lot of these things that we're doing, it's when you do a civic building like this, it's of the people, for the people. You have to also protect the people that are doing those services. So we're very excited about this opportunity, absolutely in love with this project and what it can do. So I think that's the end of our presentation, but welcome to talk about anything you want.
Thank you very much. Great looking pictures. Liz?
Yeah, I'll just highlight again the variances. I think Scott's done a nice job, and Kevin really went over the variances as well. But just to kind of draw your attention to those. Let's see, so if you can skip to page 3, at the bottom of page 3, just reminding again that in Parkland, there's no side or rear yards called out, so no particular concerns there. Front yards established from neighboring existing buildings. In the case of our site, we have also the area plan, so kind of going along with both of those conditions there. Lot coverage, no specific limits. Obviously, we're taking great care to treat the site with the lot coverage we have in a sensitive way. Building height's limited to 35 feet because of being catty corner to a residential district. Most of the area around this building, of course, is industrial, but a street and catty corner, nonetheless, you're still adjacent to residential, so technically it's 35 feet. The building itself is less than 35, but the penthouse extends up to, I believe, 38. We raised the building up just a little bit. No parking setback distances for Parkland, so no issues there. Required parking, a reduction ultimately from 122 to 105. All the spaces are compliant. There's a loading area in the back. The traffic concept was extensively studied by the city engineer and is as recommended. There will be a full service normal stoplight at the intersection of Glendale and Goodale, synced up with the one at Grandview and Goodale. Anticipating in part that the redevelopment anticipated for the future to the east will add load to the street, and so a full service lane, as well as the relationship across the street merits that light there. Let's see here. The refuse containers will be screened, no issues. Parking areas are largely screened, except for the ones out front are more set in the landscape than screened on the edges. So that's the concept there. Plenty of trees for the number of parking spaces that we have, more than required. There's a few things yet to be completely developed. The parking lot fixtures haven't been selected yet, but will be cutoff fixtures as required by code. Signage is still being developed. That may come back as we get closer to what that really wants to be. It's just locating those signs for the time being. And then with regard to the building design, one of the things that's really emphasized in the design guidelines is authenticity and attention to craft in the building, and recognizing the history of the city. And so where this building is located is in our industrial corridor. When we did the Goodale West area plan, one of the comments that we heard is that people are not interested in a sort of made-up historical version of a building, but rather something that's authentic to our particular area and this particular corridor. So the architects were working with that concept from the get-go. Let's see. Yeah. So fencing. So that again, there's a little bit of a variance there because of the location of the fence. Technically, we really have two front yards because we're on a side street and how the building is oriented. So it essentially sort of have some fencing in the front yard, but that's clearly very well screened now. The police chief is delighted with retaining those big evergreen trees for screening of the parking lot and the police operations to the rear of the building, so excited to be able to have made that change as well. The covered parking is the minimum that is required functionally for the police and fire departments, so that accessory structure is larger as a response to utilitarian necessity. The only other note that I'll make is that our current zoning code reads that parkland shall include public parks, playgrounds, public gardens, and any recreational uses. This lot has been zoned parkland ever since it's been used for a service center, so this is not new. We considered rezoning this site to something else, but I did a search of other zoning districts and buildings in other jurisdictions around the city, and it's not uncommon to have parkland utilized in this way. So in conjunction with the case tonight, also looking for a recommendation from Planning Commission to amend the zoning code to read as noted there, is essentially just adding that Parkland may include any public building erected and or owned by the city, subject to approval of planning commission. So with that, I think that we've taken your comments. We've also taken comments from the architectural design ad hoc committee that the mayor put together, from the Parks and Facilities Advisory Board. And very pleased to bring forward a building that we've gotten a lot of positive feedback for. Happy to answer any other questions and to incorporate anything that you see that we still are missing. But very, very excited to bring the project forward for approval as submitted.
Thanks, Liz. Appreciate it. All right, commission members, start with 10. What do you got?
So I think they addressed a lot of the comments that we, had last time. Globally, I mean, I get that we have to have a parking lot in front of the building. I don't really want to see it burned up and completely screened, because I think this is a successful application. I'm not convinced it works like 100% as shown, but at the same point, I have to trust staff, designers, that this is really well thought out and practical. I really do like the rain gardens, and I like the cleanliness of the approach from the corner. I think that's a great contrast and a successful thing for the community. A couple comments related to just the plan that I have before me. Looks like one of the signs is located outside of the property line on the corner there. I don't know if that's an error or like it is.
That was in fact an error. It's been addressed in the.
Okay. So I think it's appropriate corner for it. Just get that cleaned out. And then, yeah, I mean, I think it just comes down to, I know there's been a lot of work. We didn't get any public comments. I think the design's great in general, and so I think I just have to trust that the community will embrace this design and the work that's been put forward at this point. That's really all I have.
Thanks. Francis?
I don't have anything to address a lot from last time, and very thoroughly presented again, so no comment.
Mark?
Always exciting to see all the fun graphics and things, so appreciate all that detail. I had just one comment, I think. I thought the last time around, there was when, some people are gonna be in the park, they're crossing over at the intersection there at that crosswalk to the northeast corner. And as, I see you've got a connection to a sidewalk that comes into the motor court, but some people aren't gonna notice that right away. They're gonna keep walking straight down Glendale, and then they're not gonna find their way to the building without walking back. And I thought there was a diagonal sidewalk that paralleled some shrubbery, that where. No, go to the northeast.
Oh, here? In front of the hedge.
Yeah. That got deleted, I think, or a sidewalk or a pathway there, and I just think that people are gonna end up walking alongside of the driveway.
Oh, I hear you.
Yeah.
It paralleled the hedge.
It was by the hedge, and it just, I just feel some people are gonna get lost not having that pathway. And the other corner that you're pointing to, the big lawn works for me. You go right or left, and you got to, so I think that's fine. You're bringing them into the parking lot again, though, from that front. The two ways in.
Yep.
And is that a safety thing? Or it almost makes more sense to me to come directly to the center and use the spots between the parking spaces in the center to walk between, that you're not really walking through the paths or something.
Yeah.
And just have one there and then move the other one around to pick up off of Glendale. That's, And I noticed you don't have anything along Douglas, which might be just because of costs, and it's not a major street right now. It can be added later. And that, it might be that you
It's a safety issue. We don't want to encourage people walking back there.
Yeah, so I figured you were talking with them about why that wasn't there. It looked intentional to me, but
It's more like an alley back there.
right now, but as things get developed down the
Long term,
road,
right.
then there's potential if that happens.
I think the hope is if there's a rails to trails, that the pathway will be there, and then, not having people walk right up against the back side where we have safety services exiting
Yeah.
in the back.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me there.
Yeah.
But I think along the north side, there's a couple sidewalks seem missing to me, and it will be like the old where you're gonna cut through the lawn, where people are gonna walk through the lawn to get where they need to be, because they're like, oh, I can't go through that gated door.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, the single walk up the center might be interesting too, of the lot,
Yeah.
And, again, we're trying desperately to make that parking lot not look like a parking lot. And so we're struggling with materials and costs and all that stuff, but, that's still the intent.
I think everything else, has been great, so I like the direction on the outside. Initially, I was a little skeptical with, there's a building that got torn down from my office up the street that had the same ribs, but it was a concrete panel. It was H.W. Williams or whatever, they had there, it didn't age well, but I think the brick, and I know there's a lot of brick everywhere, and as a material, it's kind of nice you're introducing things other than brick, because I think architects, we overuse brick sometimes here, but there's a lot of representation of brick. I live in a brick high-rise, and so I think it's appropriate, and I like your playfulness on that.
Good.
That's it.
Yeah, I appreciate the thoughtfulness that's gone into the site, siting and the green infrastructure and even inside how the program works. I really appreciate that. I echo Mark's comment about a better way to get pedestrians through into the building, because we are a welcoming community. And so I just think we have to make sure we're enforcing that. So I like the idea of a center walk, if you can make that work, and something to, if people come across along Glendale to get again, so they're not walking on that.
Yeah, kind of cut the corner.
Of the, but I appreciate, again, the gesture at the corner, that we talked about that last time, and again, the screening of the trees to allow, some of that, all this back parking, because I think Prince had brought before, there's not really a back to this building, because it's the gateway into the community, but I think what you've done and what you've shown there really, it is a nice solution using those existing trees, so that's good. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm still struggling with that, the gated area, because there was nothing in our packet that showed what that was gonna look like, and I can.
You're talking about here?
No, where, that front sidewalk that goes towards, that there. I mean, everything's obscured by like a tree or something that's in our packet, so.
Sorry.
So
So the
I just
idea-
feel like it's not finished, and so I guess my question is, why is it there? Can we just close it off with, just have the edges go?
So here's why it's there. So we want to make it very clear when you're walking, say you're walking here, that there's a closed gate that is not a gate for you to go through, so that people don't walk in front of the fire bays, right? The firefighters requested access from their paddock over here if there's ever an emergency outside, so they can easily get there. So that's why that gate is there. So it's if somebody has an accident in the parking lot or a heart attack or something, that they can quickly get to them. That's the reason for the gate. So it's a great reason for the gate. We're gonna make the gate obscured by everything imaginable so that only the fire department knows it's there. That's
You're well on your way.
Yeah. The hedge will come up to it and you really won't know it, all of a sudden you'll see the gate, because the hedge is kind of on both sides.
And I think the walk also, that, putting that walk back in will help that clarity with what we're doing.
And I agree with Marcus, someone walking down there and it turns out, and I don't know if it was a budget thing or something to not have the walk there, but I feel like there's a missed opportunity of not having it there. Because I was looking at this, and I know with all these types of facilities, municipal facilities, there's always some area for remembrance or honoring something, or, I don't know, displaying a tree plaque, I don't know, but can that walkway then be used for something in the future?
You're talking this one?
Yeah,
Or
where the flagpoles are, a small plaza there that can eventually be used for, I don't know, honoring whatever, it just seems like there's always some area like that around a municipal building. Instead of just having a bare walkway along the hedgerow, maybe it can be utilized in the future. I don't know if what that would be, but, but I agree with Mark. I think it's having some access from that direction would be best. So, yeah, initially the for panels, I was very uncertain about it, but what you come back with, I really like it. I like how it's layered and the paneling. I think I've seen some other buildings that have it where as you drive by, it sort of changes colors. And I think that would be really neat. Even, and I like that it's mostly hidden.
Yeah.
I think if it was more exposed, it would maybe look a little. I wouldn't take it as seriously, but I think this looks really nice. So, nice job. I didn't realize the police required so much space. It's a lot of space, but no, I like it. Thanks for explaining the gate again, because I'm guessing you explained it to me last time as well.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, it's pretty regular that people drive up to the front of the building and say, can I see the fire department? And they're having, maybe, they want a high blood pressure check, or they're having, maybe not an emergency, but it might be, so they need to be able to get there, and that's 100% what that is.
All right, that's enough for me. Okay, that's all I had, Mayor.
Yeah, well, I similarly need to thank this team. This project's really meaningful for our community, as I'm sure you've absorbed. And I think you have taken that on as your own mission here. You've shown incredible tenacity and dedication and almost obsessive about getting this right. And, as stated, it's a functional building, and every time, Scott, you would ask me, how do you see this, Mayor? Well, it just needs to get built, and it just needs to function. But, you have certainly delivered us much more than that, and done, I think, a really amazing job of balancing, both looking to the past, looking to the future, placing it within the park, again, balancing function and design, and, ensuring our city survives with something that's going to serve us into the future here. So thank you to the team, and, all these details, similarly have been, and I think we'll continue. I know you're gonna take some of these comments to heart, and we might come back with some tweaks, but it's hard for me to express how meaningful this is to the folks who work there as well, having, spent their entire professional lives in some cases in a building that's really falling down around them. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. I agree. You should take pride in your public facilities, and they should be nice, something to be proud of. Any questions or comments from anyone in the audience? All right, commission members, any other
I just
discussion?
had one comment, and it's kind of from Liz's summary here. As part of this approval, were you asking to permanently amend the zoning code for Park Place?
I think that can be a separate, recommendation, doesn't have to be in the motion related to the project.
Okay, I haven't really thought about it at all, I don't know the future impacts, and I feel like that would be just like mixing too many things. So, that's where I stand on that.
Yeah, I'll bring back, a couple sort of cleanup administrative items on both of the projects, related to the right of way and zoning. Yeah.
Okay.
That was my only comment there, guys. Someone else pour experience sheet.
Well, I mean, is it
think you could
preferable
just-
to have it all packaged into one motion, or?
I mean, I think that you could, you can approve it as submitted, with maybe the conditions about the sidewalk without getting into a million specifics.
that
If
our
that
pleasure,
suits,
right?
if that suits the commission.
Okay. So motion to approve PC 02-2023-1525 West Goodell Boulevard, as submitted, with the consideration of some additional pedestrian connection sidewalks as discussed.
Second.
Commissioner Rourke,
Yes.
Commissioner Koskuski,
Yes.
Commissioner Heller,
Yes.
Commissioner Brandano,
Yes.
Chairman Gentry.
Yes. Thank you guys again.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Appreciate the presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's a lot.
I want to say thank you, commission members, for a long night.
Yes.
And a lot of, a lot of work leading up to this too.
So far, no cases were due.
Cool, thank you. Just about to make it.
Yeah, I might not be able to be here. Yeah. I'm sorry. Speaking of which, given all this paperwork and organizing and printing, is it better to give us some sort of technology, or is it